tragedy. That's the Daily Nation. On the Standard,
horror of family members wiped out. That is takes 3/4 of this paper, but other highlights are on the top.
And we'll come back to those highlights later.
But this is the biggest conversation. Even for this entire week, the president was there just seeing how things are going to be on the scene.
All right, tulivyohepa kifo, waathiriwa wengine wenye majeraha mabaya wasimulia jinamizi lililowapata na kuangamiza zaidi ya wakazi 48. Kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo habari kuu pale.
On Business Daily, Kenyatta's Equity CEO top in 63 billion Kenya shillings bank dividends.
Wow.
Yes.
63 billion shillings in dividends. Not profits, not anything else, just dividends. How about that?
Filthy rich. Dad help a child's plea as floods swept a village. The same story. And finally, now the Star has
they finally woken up and come back to the story that matters. Yes.
Oh, yes.
That's the Star today.
But the Wangari is also making big news. But in Uganda,
how UK's sanctions will bite Among and ex-ministers. Among is the Speaker of the National Assembly in Uganda. And more stories there on the front page, how to excel in the crowded job market. And the Daily Monitor sometimes looks like a tabloid on the front page. So these are the kind of stories they're looking at this Wednesday, May the 1st. But on the New Vision,
what UK sanctions on Speaker Among mean the same bits. But then this is, I think, the first we've seen on all the dailies that has a mention of the Labor Day, and they say 58 get medals, supplement inside.
Yes. So yes, at least Labor Day celebrations making it to the front page of the New Vision in Uganda. In Tanzania, macho yote kwa Samia. Wanafanyakazi waeleza vilio matarajio yao kwa serikali, sakata la kikokotoo, nyongeza mishahara na mazingira mazuri kazini kuteka sherehe. So at least in Tanzania, they're also focusing on the Labor Day celebrations.
Oh yes, but then as much as we have the whole tragedy of landslides in Kenya, it is also mentioned in Tanzania. They say simanzi milia wanne wa familia moja ikiagwa Mushi. Hii ni majeneza yenye mili ya watu 5 waliofariki baada ya
sioni pale.
But basically ni masuala ya vifo vya udongo kutekana na maporomoko ya udongo haya.
Lakini pale wamepa kipaumbele habari ya siku ya wafanyikazi duniani. Government's mining policy shift as it eyes more benefits. That's the main story on the Citizen, but a mention of Labor Day. All eyes on Samia's Nation marks Workers' Day. Also making it to the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania. In Kenya, all the dailies are focusing on the tragedy in Mai Mahiu. Those are the dailies this morning. Let's now take a look at the traffic. And I don't know why this map is misbehaving now. That's a map of Kenya. Let's put it properly. Wache kulala. Let's go now to Nairobi. And okay, fine. As the map misbehaves, what I know right now is that that section of the road right next to Thika Highway, that section of the road just at the main gate of the Kenyatta University.
This is I've helped you. I know at your age.
That section of the road, there's a lot of water.
Yes.
And yes, you can see the red there.
Finally.
All the way from that interchange at Ruiru,
yes,
all the way to the main gate at Kenyatta University. And it is red, meaning that section of the road is troubled as it is.
And just after the gate, and before you actually hit the Kahawa and Dani stage, also you can see bits and pieces of red. But then so here is really seems as if the major snarl up.
So if you're using that road towards town, the good thing is that today is a holiday, so probably not many cars on the road, but that section of the road, if at all you're driving on Thika Superhighway, take note that that section next to Kenyatta University, there is a problem. There's nothing else to report on Thika Highway. The other story we need to report on is on the other side of town, and this is at, what do you call this place? Nairobi West. Nairobi West, around this area. Yes, you can see this red here. And this is Nairobi Sorry for that. That roundabout from Makadara all the way to the Timol roundabout, it is closed right now to traffic, and that has to do with flooding. Why this is maybe a concern today is that the Labor Day celebrations will be happening along Langata Road at Uhuru Gardens grounds. And you can see Mbagathi Way, that section after Nyayo High Rise all the way down towards Timol roundabout is closed as well. There's heavy flooding around this area. So anyone hoping to use Mbagathi Way or Langata Road this morning, take caution. So the other area, but I don't know if this map can actually see it, is in Kitengela. Kitengela, as you drive after that interchange on Mombasa Road, getting into Kitengela, there's also a problem. I don't know if it's been captured by this map, but that whole area is flooded. The Kenya Red Cross has tweeted that this morning at around 4 a.m., they've been busy trying to evacuate families who have been marooned by floods in areas of Kitengela, Deliverance Church Road and other roads around that area. So anyone living in Kitengela right now, probably they may not be able to access Mombasa Road towards town. Again, saving grace is that today is a holiday, so not many people may be looking to travel to Nairobi for work or other related activities.
Oh, yes, so I'm trying to skim through this map and
see.
The
three sections you need to take care of: Thika Road around Kenyatta University, Langata Road around Makadara and Mbagathi Way, and in Kitengela. Elsewhere, it's nothing much to report. Well, of course, slow traffic generally because of flood waters, puddles here and there, but that's the traffic this morning. Take a look at the weather now.
Let's take a look at the weather, and we're going to use the Kenya Meteorological Department and what it has for us today. Yesterday, they're giving a report on the same, just stating that the whole forecast is going to continue. So let's refresh this and see what is the latest on the same. So as of, right. So May rainfall, according to this particular imeamua nayo ilod pole pole on the same. But let's take a look at also how things are going to be looking like for the weather, particularly in, let's say, parts of Nairobi, and see how it is, kind of temperatures. They say 18 degrees Celsius, precipitation of about 20%. The days that we've seen 80%, so precipitation of 20% is moderate, low to moderate thereabout, and they say the whole of today it is going to be raining. You do expect to see some sunshine between 8 a.m. to around 10 a.m. and then rainfall kicks in
at 11.
At 11.
Oh yes.
And it is actually going to be increasing. So the intensity of the rain for today, as they have it for you there, all the way from 11 a.m. proceeding into the day and even into the night, 80% expect precipitation of about 80% into the night. Temperatures as low as let me see.
And what they're saying is that this showers at around 11, then thunderstorms as for midday all the way to midnight. So it's going to be heavy rain for the entire afternoon today. So ini siku ya kukaa nyumbani.
Light rain showers. Yes. Again, as you say, saving grace, it is a holiday.
It is a holiday. So if at all you don't need to travel or to move around, please don't. It's not one of those good days to head out of your house. Kama unaweza kaa nyumbani, watch Morning Cafe. We will tell you everything you need to know.
And you tell us how hot is the coffee where you are.
Yes, of course. Keep it TV47 will be bringing you all the details with regard to the Labor Day celebrations that will be happening in Nairobi and elsewhere across the globe.
Oh, yes. And just to also remind them, we do have a packed show for them. The guests that we're going to have, the unionists as well as lawyers, just to understand, even as, even as a worker, even as an employee, both in the private as well as the public sector, what you really need to know when it comes to your rights, and also on your end, the kind of
the situation that labor unions and workers unions are facing. As we speak today, we heard that there's going to be a parallel Labor Day celebrations away from what KOTU has organized. We'd want to see what exactly is happening and what is the point of divergence between KOTU and all these other unions. We'll be hosting some of the union leaders right here in studio. Do stand by for that. For now, let's take a look at the dailies. right, and I'm looking at the front page of the Standard, the image there. Superimposed on it is the headline, "Horror of Family Members Wiped Out." And you can see the debris that was left after the flash floods in Mai Mahiu there, and a vehicle that was swept away by flood waters also in that photo there. And this is not a small car. It looks like a 4x4, probably a V8 vehicle. And it was still swept away, because I know some people may be thinking, oh, my car is too big, my car is big enough, it cannot be carried by flood waters. Look at the image on the front page of the Standard today. And they say, tears and agony, the stark reality of the full impact and deadly devastation of the Mai Mahiu flooding tragedy came home painfully yesterday, when families began identifying bodies of fallen kin, with more than 70 still missing. The death toll hit 48, with one family, that of Tabitha Wanja, losing 8 members to the disaster. The Standard has dedicated pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 to this story. And yes, more photos and stories inside. And there's a photo on page 3 of the Standard with young boys keenly watching some content on a site engineer's phone, resting under a truck that was drilling water in Bobasi, Kisii. Matters flooding still making big news. And under the title, Deluge of Death, pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 dedicated to the tragedy in Mai Mahiu. Today they found space for other highlights on the front page of the Standard. On the top strip, former Governor Wairia in the dock of alleged graft. There is an enterprise pull out today which focuses on e-mobility, which are facing exit. An interesting story about Kamba cases and cleansing. The inside pages of the Standard. And in business, super rich investors bet on Kenya. On the back page, Terzic repays Dortmund faith before PSG clash. And this is in the Champions League. Matches to be played today. Dortmund will be hosting Paris at 10 p.m. Yes, and we have photos there of Sancho and Mbappe, who will be clashing today in the Champions League. That's the Standard this morning.
On the Daily Nation, those who lost, and they say it is tragedy. Everyone is mourning here. The residents of Jerusalem and Kamuchiri villages in Mai Mahiu have lost relatives, friends and neighbors who are among the 48 victims of the devastating deluge that came down in the wee hours of Monday. One family is living the horror and pain of losing 4 members. There was another family, one of the papers has reported, losing 8 members of the family. You can imagine. Even at one place, I mean, you come back to take a look at where your home was, and it is just boulders, yes, on the same. And that story also has photos of those that were lost. But other highlights on the front page of Daily Nation, on the right scroll, Labor Day, they say no reprieve for workers amid strife. This is going to be our biggest conversation today. And just to mention but a few, a teacher who earned a monthly salary of 56,000 thereabout in 2020 was earning 51,475 Kenyan shillings by 2022. And that definitely reduced in 2 years, while a county worker who earned 72,000 in 2018 took home a monthly salary of 58,000 in 2022. And we definitely expect to see what the unionists will be saying today on the same. Into the courts now, and Wairia charged with a 351 million Kenyan shillings fraud. That is a former Murang'a governor. There on the bottom scroll, Defense Ministry spent 38 million Kenyan shillings to quote-unquote clean KICC windows pavements. Wow. In ile siku, as much as we'll be having the national celebrations and singing Kenya ni yetu, Kenya yetu, this is the Kenya yetu that we're living in. And this actually reminds me, by 1st May, CS Kithure Kindiki said that going to have the passports insurance reduced by about, was it 21 days as of 1st May. And I believe this, again, from the ministry, they've changed that again.
Okay.
They're saying system failure of the machines.
The goalposts keep shifting.
Oh, yes. On the front page of the Daily Nation, Linturi's job on the line as Wetangula gives the nod to impeach motion. Agriculture CS is facing the sack of fake fertilizer saga, and they ask, will he survive? And finally, on the back page, MPs question cost of renovations carried out at KICC. That is the whole bit. But then now to the story that I was alluding to earlier, that is on the back page of Daily Nation, on the bottom scroll. Immigration suspends passport application and issuance due to, this technical hitch. And so the Immigration Department yesterday halted the application and collection of passports due to technical problems with its systems. The timing of this is something that Kenyans are going to be raising. Just a day before what you had promised, there is a technical hitch. And you're going to be having this over and over and over again. I mean, the Kenyans who are actually anticipating to start the process by 1st of May, so that they know by 21st of May, they have their passports, but
patience.
Yes, on to Business Daily.
On the Business Daily, they talk about this hefty dividends. Kenyatta's equity CEO top in 63 billion shilling bank dividends. The families of Jomo Kenyatta and former Central Bank of Kenya Governor Philip Ndegwa, the I&M Bank founder Suresh Shah, and Equity Bank Chief Executive James Mwangi are among the top beneficiaries of the combined 61.3 billion shillings, not million, billion shillings, dividends that Kenya's listed banks are set to pay. Now, the Kenyattas hold 13.2% stake in this NCBA. Wow. And the Ndegwas, they own 14.94% in the same bank through First Chartered Securities. So yes, some hefty dividends for some top families. Another story about rich people. Kenya dollar millionaires rent out their second homes. These are people with more than one home. Hiyo yako kaa tu hapo tulie. 9 out of every 10 dollar millionaires in Kenya are renting out their second homes, according to findings from the Knight Frank Wealth Report. The report published yesterday notes that the high net worth individuals whose assets stand at $1 million and above have returned their additional residential properties into income-generating assets.
So you come there and you say, for 3 months,
Niko na nyumba saba,
let me rent out this.
Is less to me sana. And a photo there of the President William Ruto visiting the scene of the tragedy in Mai Mahiu yesterday, alongside Governor of Nakuru, Susan Kehika. And at least that makes it to the front page. Other highlights on the front page of the Business Daily: fresh system glitch halts passport services. Nyaringita has talked about that. Vivo cuts power used by 156 megawatts on solar plant. And online shoppers splash 83.3 billion shillings on electronics, fashion products. Very many numbers on the front page of the Business Daily today.
Right, let's move on to another paper and take a look at the Star. They say, dad help at child's plea as floods swept the village. 169 and counting. This is in different parts of the country. Deaths recorded in Nairobi, Homa Bay, West Pokot, Tana River counties. Talking about Mai Mahiu, survivors say they watched helplessly as loved ones and livelihoods washed away. That is on pages 4 and 5. There's a collage of photos there, some sad and horrific photos on the same. And we'll be updating you also on how the latest is going to be today in Mai Mahiu. Other stories on the bottom scroll. Mombasa father worried about 24-year-old son abducted 20 weeks ago, and they're asking who took him. Into the rains, Met, the Meteorological Department warns of heavy rains and mudslides this week in parts of Kenya. And we're taking a look at the forecast that the Met Department had as of Sunday, showing as of this Sunday until next week Sunday, the 100 millimeters line, and the red and as well as the yellow one really was reflected on most parts of the central Rift Valley, western as well as Nyanza. So that is going to be an indicator of how much the floods are going to be, and are going to be increasing for this week. And finally, on the very top scroll of this paper, Martha Wangara makes it back to the front pages. And they say court declares Martha Wangara's 13.4 million Kenyan shillings proceeds of crime forfeit it to the state. that is a star for you this morning.
Kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, tulivyohepa kifo ndio habari kuu pale. Waathiriwa wasimulia, wanasema wengi wenye majeraha mabaya simulia jinamizi ilivyowapata na kuangamiza zaidi ya wakazi 48 pale Maimahiu. Pale Rais Ruto aamuru wanajeshi kusaidia kusaka miili kwenye vifusi, akisema serikali itagharamia mazishi na bill ya hospitali. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Masuala ya Maimahiu bado yanapewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Habari zaidi, vidokezo zaidi. Polisi KDF waliolimana kuadhibiwa. Maafisa wa jeshi na wenzao wa polisi walinaswa wakipigana Likoni. Habari yenyewe kwenye ukurasa wa 5. Habari hiyo ya Madheo Angara na kupoteza mamilioni pia iko kwenye gazeti hili. Na zaidi, vidokezo zaidi kwenye spoti. UEFA PSG Dortmund wanaonana leo. Pale juu, Wairia apewa dhamana na kwingineko mpango wa kumtimua Linturi waiva. Spika aidhinisha hoja ya kumng'oa waziri kutokana na sakata ya mbolea feki. Na hiyo ndio ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo hii leo.
And finally on People Daily. Okay, where's People? If probably we can have People Daily on the screens. I'm trying to look for it.
I don't think we have that copy today.
Yes, okay. Oh yes. I was actually loading the e-paper.
So probably we can ni kama hawajaamka.
Oh yes.
The cartoons today focus more on Labor Day, and on page 12 of the Standard we have 2 frames, one from 2001 and a caricature there of the COTU Secretary General riding on the shoulders of workers in 2021, May 2021. That time it was in black and white. So a more colorful photo in May 2024 of the same COTU Secretary General in sunglasses, now riding on the shoulders of hustlers who are now even more burdened by life. And that's the cartoon on page 12 of the Standard.
On the black and white, and right now there isn't much difference. It's just the shades
but there's more color there.
And the color, well, the facial expressions and,
the thing is
and how he looks like. He still just looks the same.
Yeah, but at least the workers back in 2001 appeared a bit stronger and well off. Their issues were much better sorted out, unlike the hustler in 2024.
I was talking about his appearance. He himself has...
Okay, apart from the color and the sunglasses, is still the same.
Oh, yes. A time when I wasn't as old as like
yes, in 2001, you were still not even an idea. On page 15 of the Daily Nation, still to do with matters Labor Day, and yes, you can see that purple that is now reminiscent of COTU and Francis Atwoli. And here he's playing the guitar upside down and singing a song. Another Labor Day, usual empty promises, long on speeches, little on delivery, until next year. And the choir master, whoever is conducting this music piece, is the same person, but now in the UDA colors, yellow and green, meaning that the UDA party appears to have taken over
on the same
COTU.
You imagine how that song could have gone.
Yeah.
Another Labor Day, usual empty promises, long on speeches.
When it comes to workers, sometimes we advise workers to stick to what they know best. And I'm going to give you that advice this morning, Stanley. You're good at what you do. You're good at what you do.
That was a good piece.
No, you're good at what you do, Stanley. That's the cartoon. Those are the cartoons this morning. And yes, so well, today the discussion, even as we continue talking about what's happening in Maimahiu, will center more on the state of trade unions. And we'll be having quite a number of union leaders in our studios this morning for that discussion. Do stand by for that. Peterson Washira, National Chairman, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, Dr. Dennis Miskela, Deputy Secretary General of KMPDU, and Nyakundi Moriasi Pius, CEO, Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers. And yes, most of these are still on strike. So we will be having that discussion after this. To stand by for that.
Oh yes, and obviously concurrently, just a follow-up on that as well, the same matters Labour will be talking to Silas Akiro, an advocate of the High Court. He's already in, as well as Ruth Tanui. She's also an advocate of the High Court. Just to understand, we as workers, what do we really need to know when it comes to our roles and responsibilities, as well as the limitations that come in on and what the Constitution really says on the same.
All right.
Oh, yes.
Let's take a break now. You're watching Morning Cafe, and be sure to be part of the conversation online through X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya.
And very good morning to you. My name is Stanley Nyeringita. This is the 59th celebrations of the Labour Day, International Labour Day, and we'll be giving you the whole coverage on this. And before we actually, begin, as a worker, do you understand your rights? As an employee, as an employer, do you understand the whole roles and the responsibilities that you have on the same? And privileged to be joined by two advocates of the High Court, Ruth Tanui as well as Silas Akiro. Very good morning to you. I'll start with you. First of all, Tanui, as your introduction as well as just telling us the kind of labour laws and what our labour laws really are.
Okay, so as you have said, I'm Ruth Tanui. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I'm also the founder and managing partner of Ruth Tanui and Company Advocates. So in regards to labour laws, I would say that I think from our practice, you find that most employees don't understand their rights. And there are we have over 8 Kenyan labour laws that protect employee rights in Kenya. Mm-hmm. Yes, but most people are not aware of them. You find someone coming to the office just looking for their terminal dues, but they don't even understand that their rights have been infringed on, like salary reduction of your salary without your consultation. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Now, Akiro, Semonio, what really are labour laws?
Well, good evening, Kenya. Good morning, Kenyans, and happy holidays. As you've heard, my name is Silas Akiro. I am the proprietor of Akiro and Associates Advocates. Straight to your question, the Kenyan labour laws, actually they flow or they trickle down or in synchrony with the international provisions. And they're actually pegged on some of the Bill of Rights that accrue to different humans, as well as their working conditions are concerned. So as my colleague has just said, we have over 8 laws, pieces of legislations that are only geared towards and strictly focused on labor, on the labor rights of employees. So some of them will have the Labor Institutions Act, we have the Labor Act, we have the Employment Act, we have the Work Benefits Injuries Act, and then we have the Occupation Health and Safety Act. And then the chief among them is the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, which is actually the parent of all the statutes within the country.
All right. And now the fact that you've actually broken them down nicely. As a reminder also, in case you're watching us this morning, from wherever you are, this is the time to now call us live and ask all those questions or even give us opinions. Do you understand your rights as an employee, as an employer? Do you understand them? What are some of those rights as a worker that you really need to know? And you probably know them, but then you just know a highlight of them, but you don't really know them deep enough. Call us live 0795 045864, and the advocates will be answering them for you. To know he's rightfully listed them down. You could probably take us through how, as a worker, let's say someone in the media industry, do all of this factor in for me? Or are some of them specific to the nature of someone's work?
Yeah, it will be, most of them are specific to, all of them will protect, because like the Occupational and Safety Act is, for instance, when you get injured while at work. And then for the WIBA, it's the same thing. So, and yeah, it factors in, it depends on the nature now of what you're seeking for. What you're seeking for is when now but generally it protects all employees in Kenya, as long as you're an employee. Also employers, it looks at both the rights of the employer and the employees. Yes, all of them protect. For instance, the Employment Act itself has listed the rights of the employee, like rights to maternity leave, your right to paternity leave, sick leave. So if, for instance, now what you're seeking for, maybe you have been summarily dismissed from work, the Employment Act is the one that is going to kick in. If maybe you have been injured in work, WIBA, Work Injury and Benefits Act, is the one that's going to kick in. Yes, it's for all employees, but now it will depend on the nature of right you're looking for. Yes.
When you started, you told us that a majority of people don't really know the rights, and I think Akiru can tell us this. And it's quite common if you're going to be doing a spot check and asking 10 people. Maybe one of them, or even 20 people, one of them might probably know the rights, and this person is employed and has a contract and all that. Who is really supposed to tell this person and give them the awareness of their rights?
Well, we understand that first of all, ignorance of the law is no defense in any court of law. Mm-hmm. So it is actually incumbent upon the citizens to know the laws that governs them. Moreover, the government is actually obligated to create awareness of each and every piece of legislation that they post to the country. We can always go to different portals to find out which laws we have. We have the kenyalaw.org, which enlists all the active, including pieces that have been considered unconstitutional. They regularly update those pieces of legislation. So you'll find the most active acts, particularly on that portal. We have the Parliament of Kenya that also lists these pieces of legislations. You can also walk into the government printers, get yourself a copy. Mm-hmm. We have the law reporting, Kenya law reporting. So there are so many institutions where you can get these pieces of legislation. But as per your question, it is incumbent upon the individual to be able to know. But you see, if they know the law, then it works to our detriment. You understand? But again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't know the law, because that's the reason why my colleague Chanu is there. That's the reason why you need to walk into a lawyer's office to be able to dissect these legislations for you. And as she has rightly said, that all these acts of parliament or pieces of legislations that have mentioned, they work in synchrony. But then they cover a wide range of issues. So it depends on your issues. An employee, maybe the wages have been unduly withheld. Then he walks into Wakili's chambers. Wakili will not begin to appear in court over all acts of parliament. That now WIBA has been, no, WIBA is only for injuries. Mm-hmm. There is occupation safety standards that are being set by OSHA. Okay. And so for you, you need to express yourself properly to your counsel to be able to put your issues within the lens of the law and advise you properly. We normally begin advising clients by giving them whether oral or formally written legal opinions. So from then we'll list all their issues based on the facts they give us, and then we'll advise them whether to go to court or pursue ADR.
You've told us that ignorance is not really accepted in the court of law. Now, in a situation where, as an employee, what do I expect from my employer? Should they be telling me, these are your rights? This is what, as your employer, these are the rights that you really need to know when you're working under this condition. Is it the mandate of my employer to tell me this?
No, it's not the mandate. The employer just has to obey the laws that have been set. Because even as an employer, you're required to put in policies if you have over 10 employees that guide how you're running. Apart from, because the laws, as much as, like for instance, Section 44 has listed down the gross misconducts, but it can't list all the misconducts. So as an employer, the employer just purpose is just to make sure to put in policies if they are required to just follow the law. They don't have, they are not mandated to sit you down and tell you this is your right under the law. It's your right. For them, they would, if for instance not to reduce salary, they'll do the salary reduction. So for you, if you don't know your right, you needed to be consulted for that, and you didn't know, and for you just went with. And my colleague has said, ignorance is not a defense. So you won't come later, years later, stating that I didn't know they were supposed to consult me for salary reduction. So to answer the question is, no, they are not mandated to tell you what your right is. It's up, as long as for them they're following the law. They are sticking to the laws that have been set. They're not mandated to actually sit down, and that's when most employers get away with breaking the laws. Because if you now, for you don't know that is your right under the law, you won't, like even for working hours, as much as the law has, the Employment Act has stated that you're supposed to have at least one rest day within the 7 days. So if your employer is making you go to work from Monday to Sunday, he can't tell, your employer can't sit and tell you that, no, you are required to have one rest day. The employer wants his work to be done, his or her work to be done. So for you, it's up to you now to know your right that I'm supposed to at least have at least a rest day within the 7 days of the week.
Right.
Yes.
And now let's talk about the huge chunk of the workers that are really out there. And this has to do with casual laborers. You'd find domestic workers, we leave them at home on a chunga boma and all that. Now for them, and do they really need to have the contract? Tell us about that. When it comes to matters, a contract for a formal kind of employment as well as the kind of informal employment.
Well, you see, when we talk about contracts, which brings us to another piece of legislation that really needs to also be understood by the Kenyan laborers, that is the Law of Contracts Act. Contracts can either be oral or written. Now, what casual laborers embody are what we call oral contracts. Now, these oral contracts, enforcing them becomes a bit challenging, but then the Kenyan labor laws have navigated into a way in which they are formalizing these informal contracts. For instance, the last time we were with you in studios, I don't know which topic that we were discussing, but then I indicated to you that once somebody has been employed on casual basis, then it means their wages are being paid in the more frequent periods, maybe per day or on a daily basis. But then there are some circumstances where their rights as casual laborers are actually infringed on. They too have a recourse at law. They too have a redress that the law can always safeguard or grant to them. So, for instance, the hallmark of the labor institutions, the hallmark of the Employment Act is to non-discriminatorily safeguard the rights of anybody called an employee, whether on contract or not on contract. So there are those bare minimums. You must not go below the minimum wage of the country. You must not go beyond those provisions of working hours. You must not go beyond...
So all this is penned down on the contract before you have it?
Yeah, of course, casual laborers do not have contracts.
It would be the oral as you...
It will be the oral.
And now for a better understanding of the oral bit of it, because I remember last week we were with Tanui discussing a will and drafting a will, and you told us that there's the oral bit of a will as well as the written. Now for this contract of, now for the casual laborer, and there's so many of them even in the country, an oral, how does an oral I was about to say will, an oral contract, look like? Are there any gaps within it? Because now, let's say for the will, there are witnesses. Does it also apply to the contract?
So for oral contracts, I think now what will be pegged when you come into, it will depend now with the terms that you came. But now, first we'll start with when you're going to, for instance, now, of course, by the time you're arguing with the terms of the contract, someone has broken the, so you may find the employee is the one claiming some grievance. So burden is normally on the employee. The employer, by they normally deny, they can even deny you are their employee. Burden now will be on you to prove that you are their employee.
That you worked there.
Yeah, you worked there. So that's why, like for oral, if you had an oral contract, of course you said that you had an oral contract, but you'll have it backed with evidence. For instance, now if they were paying you, the council has said, daily. Of course, maybe they are paying you via M-Pesa or to your bank. You'll have evidence backed to it. Because now if the employer is trying to say that you are not the employee, so you are not working for them, at least now you'll have something backed to it. So that's why even we normally advise again is, as an employee, not being paid on cash basis. something at least, or even communications that you had, written communications that you had, you'll peg it on it. Because you know the employer might deny. Some even, there's one I know, they were saying that my client had worked for like over 4 years, but they were saying my client was a volunteer.
Wow.
Yes, so you see.
Are you this morning advising even, let's say the domestic workers who are listening to you, to even, you know, tell the employers, ukinilipa, mimi nitumie kwa M-Pesa, you know, or if you're having any communication, you know, WhatsApp, don't just do it orally. Akiru, advise us on that.
I know they will really, the employers really not take that advice. But then there are always ways out. For instance, maybe you want to say at the end of each month, you create an issue in which now you're far from the employer. And now the employer has to send you money via M-Pesa. And then the discussion is that kindly this is deducted from my salary. So see, that discussion alone, you have not directed your employer that you must pay me via M-Pesa, but you have already shifted the discussion from a verbal contract into almost a written, because they are written proofs that you people are in contract. Remember, there are also contracts by conduct of parties. I mean, you have not formally put it down that you are in a contract, but the way you move, the way you operate, indicates that you've synchronized your operations into some bit of contractual benefits, where I provide A, you provide B. So the casual laborers have a very huge obligation to ensure that their transactions are at some point or somewhat put down in writing. Whether it is a cash that is being paid, the employer chooses to pay by cash, at least some writing. This month I have paid you, sign here, sign here. So that can also be adduced in court to assist you in leveraging on the rights that have been abrogated by your employer. Yes.
Right. There's a real quick question here. Someone saying, kindly have the Wakilis tell us about the doctors' CBA for 2017. And it really revolves around the contract, as we're talking about, matters now between the government as well as you as an employee, if you know the government is really your employer. Tell us about this, you know, the whole bit of the 2017 collective bargaining agreement, CBA, for the intern doctors, what they're really pushing. In a legal lens, what do we really need to know as Kenyans?
So the agreement was for them to, they signed the agreement in 2017 for them to get more salaries. They put like more doctors to be employed. So the agreement was in 2017. So they want it now to be enforced, because now they are following it up because it wasn't enforced. But as you know, even they went to court, and court like supported. They told them to first go back to work, and then the pay will be done. So the laws support having the CBA, collective bargaining agreement, and you have a right to it, because it's something that it's a bargaining that just like we sit down as the union of doctors and the government, and then you come into an agreement. So it's something it's a contract that they agreed. So they have like, since it's a contract and there's nothing, unless someone come and, like, for instance, when there's a contract, maybe the validity is said, maybe one person, the signature of maybe one party wasn't, or a person who didn't have the power to put in that signature. But it's legally, it's
so
binding.
It becomes null and void.
Yeah, but at the moment, there's nothing to make it null and void.
Okay.
So at the moment, it's valid. That's why when I feel they even have that, they know they have that higher power of continuing with the strikes. And in case now they are maybe fired based on that, they can easily seek damages in court.
So in case even one of the union leaders is fired because of all this,
yes,
they might be on a safer...
Yeah, they might be on a safe, because the agreement is there. And so far, I've not seen any, for the parties who are there, I've not seen anything that invalidates the agreement.
All right.
Yes. So that's why they even feel protected, because in case of anything, they have an obligation under the law if they are to go to court. Even you see, court didn't bring anything about the invalidity of the agreement. They just told them they can be going to work, because of course they are looking at the right to health for other parties, and as they wait for their pay.
Right.
Yes. what they were promised in the agreement.
The union leaders themselves are here with us this morning. They'll be joined by Fred later on for more context to that. Yeah. But then now, Akiro, for broader, because this just goes to show how updating contracts. Now, on a broader perspective, either formal or even informal. You told us there's the oral as well as the written contract. Let's go with the written, for example. Does it have to be updated with time? And what makes it null and void?
No. On invalidating contracts, or probably if I maybe branch off to this, we call it a state of nation right now, because our doctors are not in hospitals to address our parents' issues. CBAs are actually, we talk of the politics of successive governments. A government that takes the day inherits everything, including the liabilities of the previous government and its successors. Because it's the government of the Republic of Kenya. It is not the government of an individual. So what was contractually binding in the previous government has to be fulfilled if it was futuristic, as the CBA for the doctors is. And CBAs are nothing to do with oral agreement. When you go to negotiate CBAs, whatever you discuss inside there, your cup of coffee, your lively moments, if they're not captured within the contract, then you cannot bring that out, whatever is outside the CBA. So the CBAs are...
If it was not written?
Yeah, the CBAs are very special kind of contracts that their dictates have to be in writing. So that is the reason why the government is not putting disrepute into the contents of the CBA. The government's actual issue is that they are terming the doctors, qualified doctors, the one we call medical interns, as mere interns. And they are trying to disqualify the pay that was negotiated by rational Kenyans, actually professionals, because we are coming from the side of the government that has vetted its employees as against Chapter 6 of the Constitution. These are people of integrity, professionals. They sat down on one side, and then the doctors' union, the doctors, the professional doctors who are actually there to protect the rights of medical workers or doctors, workers who are doctors. They sit on the other side of the table. So we do not have a situation where, in this case, not to denigrate farmers, we don't have a situation where somebody dropped out of class 6 or class 3 and has been brought into this collective bargaining table. All were professionals. They agreed and put their agreements into writing. So, they agreed that the interns are supposed to be paid that 206,000.
Now for the legal lens of this, because I'm pretty sure now for the whole CBA and the intern doctors, the union leaders themselves are going to be handling them more in detail, because in studio. For the legal eyes on this one, right now we talk about the 2017 CBA, right now in 2024. 5 years later to come, what are we going to have now for let's say the 2017 CBA, or rather any kind of a CBA? She had told us that in case, let's say, the signature was not penned, one of the parties had not penned the signatures, will make it null and void. But what other something else that will actually make this any kind of a CBA null and void?
Now, invalidating contracts, that is the question you're putting up. We have capacity. The parties to a contract must have capacity. In Kenya, you must have attained the age of 18 years. That is when you are contractually capable to enter into a binding agreement.
Okay.
Number two, the execution of the agreement must be in line with the law. For instance, we say there are different types of contracts. Like for the wills, it must be attested by two independent individuals. For this CBS, the union leaders together with the side of the government. So if there is one side of the government that lacked capacity and anyway found his way into the executing part of this document, then the document will actually be considered unenforceable, null and void. If there is any part of the union that an individual who's not authorized to enter into an agreement with the part of the government, but either way finds his signature on the document, then the document lacks capacity. The person who signed it or executed it had no capacity to do so in law, and so that will make the contract unenforceable. Right. And so we also have issues to do with the persons of unsound mind. What is the state of your mind at the time when this execution was being carried out? If you are intoxicated, you can argue that, although there are exemptions to every general rule. So say you are insane, insanity caught up with you, the contract will be null and void. Lastly, probably I will talk about the general construction of the contract. Okay. If the contract loses meaning, however properly executed it may be, if it cannot be construed in the general legal understanding, then that contract is unenforceable, because what will you enforce if you cannot understand the dictates of the contract itself? Right. So your agreements must be put down in clear and understandable language so that you can be fined recourse at law.
Right. And just to tie that on the same, before I hand it over to Fred, Tanui, define to us what a trade union is and the responsibility as a worker. Do I need to be in a trade union? Briefly, before we take it over to the leaders of some of these trade unions.
Okay, so as an employee, you have a right to join. There's no compulsory law that requires you to be in a union, but you have a right. You can join a union. You can form a union with your other workers. You have a right to join a union. Yes, under the Act, under the Kenyan labor laws, even employers, by they can have association, but for workers, employees, you have a right to join a union, and your employer cannot prevent you from joining one. The moment your employer has prevented you from joining a union, they are going against the law. That's a ground for you to seek recourse from court or to seek justice, because you have a right to join a union. Yes.
Legally, as a union, what will institute for this union to sort of be banished, or somewhat like that, to be non-existent? So
for you, as a union, you should be looking at the rights of the employees who are part of the union. You should not be going for your own personal interests. It will not be the same thing. Are you going against, let's say even for the constitution, is there discrimination in that union where those are grounds that will invalidate the union? If there are anything going against the general laws of the constitution, like discrimination, those will be grounds that can now go. But as long as they are now looking out for the rights of their members of the union, they are within the laws.
Right, right. And just speaking about the matters state of the trade unions, as a worker, as an employer, as an employee, you've heard what the advocates are saying. And remember our question of the day, even for you, I just asking, and as a worker, do you really understand your rights? Advocates are here. Mr. Mbali, let's cross over to the other set for this conversation. Fred, over to you.
Thank you, Sally. And after listening to all the legal discussion about labor rights, we now want to venture into the state of trade unions, and we'll be joined in studio by Dr. Dennis Miskela, Deputy Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, as well as Nyakundi Muriasi, the CEO, Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers. We're also hoping that Peterson Wachira, the National Chairman of the Kenyan Union of Clinical Officers, will be able to join us virtually as we continue looking at the state of trade unions, this being Labor Day. Do stand by for that after the break. 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. This being our special coverage of Labor Day, celebration that's marked globally. And today we want to take a look at the state of trade unions. This comes at a time when a number of trade unions have engaged in industrial action, key among them the KMPDU that's leading the doctor strike that's now on its 46th or 47th day. Curiously, most of dailies today have given prominence to the issue of the tragedy in Mai Mahiu. The Daily Nation as well as the Standard, the leading dailies. But the Daily Nation has reserved a bit of space on the front page for Labor Day, and it says, no reprieve for workers amid strife and thinning pay. And yes, the story is on page 10. Private and public sectors are considering having more employees on short-term contracts, and that's a key conversation going forward. And as far as Labor Day and workers' rights are concerned, the Standard has a story on page 9. JSS intern teachers issue fresh strike threat. The cartoons on both dailies talk about matters Labor Day, but they feature prominently the image of the KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli in his usual pink attire. In studio this morning, we do have Dr. Dennis Miskela, Deputy Secretary General KMPDU. Karibu sana. It's good to have you in studio this morning.
Thank you very much, Fred, for having me.
And Nyakundi Muriasi, CEO, Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers. It is called KNUMLO. Yes.
Numlo.
Numlo.
Yes.
The K is silent.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Ideally, I should be wishing you happy Labor Day, but I don't know, Dr. Miskela, is there anything to smile about for the Kenyan worker this Labor Day?
Not really. There's nothing really happy about this Labor Day. And it's because KMPDU, we are on day 49 of our strike. Tomorrow we reach day 50, right at the middle, because last time we had a 100-day strike. Nothing to celebrate about because the doctors are not happy with how the employers, both in public and private, has treated them. And that's why we have been on strike. And sadly, nobody is coming up with any serious negotiation ideas or attempts at resolving the problem. Apart from just the doctors, the Kenyans are also paying a very high price, especially during this flooding season. So, yeah, nothing to celebrate about. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Muriasi, the last time you were here, you were talking about your union was about to start its strike the day after, I remember, if I remember right. From your end, is there anything to smile about?
Fred, there's nothing to smile about. Because as we are talking today, our union is on day 29 with the strike. And since we left here, we've never had any engagement. The government has not called us to the table to discuss anything. So we are wondering, because the Kenyans are suffering, whereas the trade union, we are trying to even come to the table and or convince the employer to come and sort out some issues that can be solved without these unnecessary industrial disputes. So,
okay, and we were hoping to have in studio Peterson Wachira, who's the national chairperson, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, who are also on strike. We still hope that he could join us virtually, but even as we wait for that. Now, when it comes to a situation like Kenya's this time around, where we have so many different unions leading their members into industrial action like this, one may wonder, is it a failure of the labor movement, or what has changed that so many unions are leading their members towards industrial action at the same time?
I'd like to answer your question with an analogy that if you're a fish farmer and one day you wake up and you find fish floating on top of the pond, do you blame the fish for being too lazy to swim? Or do you ask yourself what's wrong with the pond that the fish is not acting normally? So the same thing happens that when you see workers getting restless, be it the doctors, be it the laboratory officers, be it the clinicians, be it the nurses, be it the junior secondary school teachers, amongst others, then you ask yourself that this employer, and in this case the government, what is really wrong with this employer that everybody is getting restless? And for me, from where I stand, I think that there has been a serious mismanagement of the health sector by the parent ministry and by the counties. And why do I say so? Because the union, we have had over 100 strikes ever since the revolution began. Before that, we had 2 major strikes of 1974 and 1994. Yeah? There's also a third one in 2011. Then after that, the revolution then came. Then from then we have had 2 national strikes, but we have had hundreds of county strikes. And healthcare workers generally and doctors in specific, we don't strike for fun. Just the way planes belong to the skies, we belong to the hospital. And these patients are people we have had relationships with. These are mother whom we have been following up in the clinic when she got pregnant from week 2 or week 1. These are mother or a father who has hypertension. We have been seeing them for hypertension and following them up. So we have developed a relationship with them. So we don't just abandon these patients for the sake of abandoning them. When you see us out there, then somebody must ask themselves, what is wrong? And when you look at the ILO guideline on essential workers, those whom when they go on strike, there could be high risks, lives lost, like the police, aeroplane pilots, doctors, nurses, or healthcare workers generally. Then they say that their rights to strike is limited to some extent. Yeah? But for denying them that express right to strike, then when they have grievances, you must quickly set up a neutral arbiter who then rapidly hears their grievances. But most importantly, that whatever is agreed upon in that arbitration process then is fully and quickly implemented. So in Kempidu's case, we had a CBA in 2013, and I was listening to the lawyers what they're talking about, and the government disowned that CBA. They said that whoever signed it, the PS of Health, Mark Board then, was a stranger. And so when we pushed for its implementation, they disowned it and said, no, a stranger signed it. So we went for a 100-day strike. Then they compelled us to negotiate a new CBA. And so we called off the strike on March 17th, 2017, and began a process of negotiation. So when you hear them talk about they signed it under duress, it's like this is dishonest, because the strike ended in March 17th. That's when the CBA negotiation began and ended in the 30th of June. It is their lawyers who took the document to Justice Linet Ndolo for deposition as a court order. It is the judge who told them that, can you get me a letter of no objection from SRC? And SRC wrote letter of no objection that everything inside there we agree with. In fact, SRC, the amount for paying interns, it was 6,000. They did a job evaluation for all public servants. And for interns, we were asking for 357,000. They said no. After analyzing everything, they deserve 206. Yeah. Then the judge took all documents and deposited a court order. They didn't implement it. We sued them again in 2020 to 2021, and the judge again ordered them to implement it. They didn't implement it. So that when we finally come on for a strike 7 years later, it's not something we have done for fun. It's something that we have finished all the options. We've given strike notices before, and they convinced us to stay home for 3 months, and they'll implement nothing. So it is sad that the leadership of the health sector has failed, and I squarely blame counties, because when you go to the counties with some of these issues, they tell you, go to national government. When you go to the Ministry of Health to talk to them about this issue, they tell you, no, you are devolved, go to the county. So you are being tossed left, right? Nobody is ready to just take that leadership. And that's the kind of mess we find ourselves in.
But beyond the industrial action that labor unions and labor movements are known for, there must be other functions of such unions that probably exist that don't really get the headlines that we see. And one may wonder, could it be to some extent a failure of these unions to actually conduct some of these functions properly, that we are now seeing all these problems? Yes, we may blame the employer, but is there a weakness within labor unions as well that you could say has contributed to the kind of disjointed communication between the workers and the employers?
Fred, I cannot say that we as the trade unions were failed. Was one of the functions of a trade union.
Not necessarily failure, but are there weaknesses that are inherent within unions that are probably contributing to the kind of strife that we see right now?
Speaking from the current situation, whereby, for example, I'm speaking on behalf of the Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers. This is for the first time in history we've had our strike. And, as a union, where we are currently, I cannot say that we have a weakness that has really led us to the situation. Because we have tried to engage this government, we have tried to do some letters, and the current situation that we are in, it is because of the employer that is forcing us to be in that discussion currently. I cannot say that there is some weakness that is associated with the current state. Because as trade unions, we have raised our issues. You know, Fred, some of the reasons as to why we are even on strike, you can take, for example, one of the reasons we are on strike, it is because of, not necessarily we need money in our pocket, but we want a standard healthcare system in the country.
Okay.
We raised an issue where there was a court order that was barring non-medical laboratory officers from doing any medical laboratory test. That case was concluded in 2019. But to date, you can see the other day when the government was launching a universal health coverage, we have community health promoters that have been given testing kits. So we have tried to engage the government. We have tried to give them advice as trade unions.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this is if you look at the cartoons today, it features strongly the KOTU Secretary General. And in one of the cartoons, he's also seen wearing, this is a caricature of the person, is seen wearing the colors of the ruling party, UDA.
Yes.
And this is a face of the labor movement in Kenya. Yeah. And accusations have been made that probably the dalliance between the labor movement leadership and the political parties or the ruling party of the day could be part of the weakness in the labor movement. How much of this do you think has affected the issue that has led to this strife?
Yeah. First of all, we have individual trade unions who then have a trade center. For example, in Kenya we have KOTU, where KOTU like the union of unions. So sometimes that dalliance and mixing politics with the movement can be a little tricky. But for a fact is that in the labor movement, it's a tripartite agreement, where there's the worker, the employer, and then the government. Yeah, we are social partners. They call it labor relations. We are not enemies, and we don't have, as much as we sit across the table when we're talking, we have to continuously engage for the success of the labor movement. But the moment as a labor movement, you take partisan or you take open bias towards a certain political leaning, then it becomes problematic, because I think what Papa Atwoli is trying to do is trying to make up for the sins of the election year, when he came out strongly to support Azimio, and we all know how the elections went. So right now, to counterbalance that, he has also to overly lean on the other side.
Does that affect the
it sure does.
Workers?
It sure does, because on a normal labor relations, the employer will always have the longer end of the stick. The capital or the owners of the capital will always try to get or extract the maximum benefit or profits from the workers. Yeah, and it's up to the unions to push back that. Yeah, but now when you have part of the union leadership overly leaning to the side of the, quote loosely, the oppressor, they're not oppressors per se, but I'd use that for the purpose of the argument, then you end up with the worker suffering more. And that's why you see that now the unions are, previously we would give out strike notices, and then our overall leader, Atwoli Francis, would then come and broker a deal and try to normalize the discussions. But right now, most unions feel like they've been abandoned, sort of, yeah? Because when the housing fund came and the unions were complaining around it, you saw Papa supported it. When you saw the issues around the chief came, they supported it. So the workers at one point, when we find that we can no longer count on you as our captain, people will look for power abhors vacuum. People start being all over the place. Yeah?
Are we saying that KOTU is slowly becoming irrelevant as
Fred, what I can say, just to add on what my colleague has said, is that KOTU is a central organization of trade unions. It's a union of all unions, as he has said. But some unions are affiliated to KOTU. Mine is not already.
Yes, okay.
We don't intend to.
Why is that?
Anytime soon, because...
Are you saying you don't see any possible dividends from...
just like I said, it is very wrong to mix politics with the labor issues. Currently, we've had a situation whereby some secretary generals of trade unions have joined political parties. They have even been given positions in some certain political parties. And you see, you cannot bite a finger that fits you. So the moment you go and to go to bed with the employer, I'm sorry to say so.
That's the weakness I was talking about, that the dailies when it comes to politics.
Yeah, because now we have had some giant unions before, the teachers' union. When for example, Sosion mixed the labor issues with politics, you saw what happened to the teachers' trade union. We have had nurses' union, and we can be able to see what has happened to the union. So in short, what we are trying to say is that as workers and as trade unions, we have a right to protect our workers without necessarily jumping into the political vehicles in this country.
Okay. Yeah. And I can see Bwana Peterson Wachira has finally managed to join us. Peterson, good morning. Peterson Wachira is the national chairperson, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. I was just about to wish you a happy Labor Day, but I need to ask you first. Are you celebrating anything this Labor Day?
Yeah, good morning, and good morning, comrades in studio. We are actually celebrating because even the strike we are in is as a result of the labor rights and the freedom and the rights that we enjoy today in terms of labor. That is the reason as to why we can be able to come out and demonstrate and picket and present petitions. So even as we are having challenges, of course, we are not very happy, but we celebrate the fact that we have that space for us to be able to fight for what is rightfully ours. So we celebrate, but as we celebrate, our celebration is actually in the form of agitation. Agitation for the rights of clinic officers, agitation for the rights of healthcare workers, and especially to ensure that the sanctity of the CBAs, that freedoms and the rights that have been guaranteed in the Constitution and then are then respected by governments, because by our government in particular. Because we are seeing a very worrying trend where a government is in contempt of law completely, and they don't seem to care. They seem to be utilizing the labor laws to their convenience when they feel that they are convenient to them, and especially when they want to discipline workers. But when the same law is on the side of the worker, like in the case of the CBAs, like in the case of strikes, like in the case of CBAs and demonstrations, then the same government now wants to disregard, now wants to use their own policies that are outside the law to manage these workers. So I think it's a celebration, and as we celebrate, then it must be a clarion call and a uniting call for all the workers to come out and face the government that is clearly in contempt of labor laws, that does not seem to want to respect labor rules, and workers must rise and ensure that the rights that have been guaranteed in the Constitution are adhered to and that the government is compliant.
Okay. And Bwana Wachira, we've been I'm in studio with Dr. Dennis Miskela from KMPDU and Nyakundi Moriasi from NUMLO. And we've been trying to examine the conduct of labor unions themselves as we look at state of trade unions. And if you look at the dailies today and the cartoons, which feature prominently the image of KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli, they seem to paint a picture of some dalliance with political powers. And when it comes to the conduct of the labor union, probably this could be seen as a weakness. Do you think that the fact that many union leaders are seeking political seats or have been really attracted towards politics or are moving closer to the political leadership, that probably has dented the image or messed up with the conduct of labor unions in general? What is your assessment of that?
Yeah, I think I want to agree. I think it was the General Secretary for NAMLO who was talking about the interference, especially when it comes to politics. And I want to agree to the extent that when you are a union official and you mix the same with politics, there is a tendency of the government, which is largely political, to then associate everything that you do in the agitation to politics, which is not a good thing. And to some extent, at some point, it has actually diluted that push that is from the union. But in ideal circumstances, politics should work very well with the unions, because politicians, and especially the elected ones, those who go to parliament, those who do not join the executive, are supposed to be fighting for the people. And the people they are supposed to be fighting for, the people who elect them, the people they represent, the people who delegate their powers, their sovereign power to them, to be able to make the decisions on their behalf, a good number of them, a good proportion, are the workers. And so we actually would expect that our members of parliament, our senators, are the people who should actually be holding the union's hands. They are the people who should be amplifying the voices of the unions, because we are the people that they are supposed to represent in that parliament. But I think the problem is our political dynamics, where we do not seem to be having an independent legislature. We are having a legislature that is largely driven by the executive, and we know that the executive is, most of the times, they don't like unions, because unions keep pushing the executive to ensure that they do the right thing in terms of labor, to ensure that there is no discrimination at workplace, which I think by far, this is the most ominous thing that is happening in the labor relations, and especially in the health sector, where there is outright discrimination as described under Employment Act, and especially on salaries. Something that is clearly provided under the law, it is termed discrimination. A government, both levels, national and county governments, they contravene the law with impunity and without care, as if they don't know actually the law exists. But then you don't see Parliament coming out to call them out and to even try to probably make resolutions in terms of motions that are supposed to address this, because most of a bigger number of the parliamentarians.
And we seem to have lost that signal. Apologies for that. But we still have Dr. Miskela in studio and Nyakundi Muriasi.
Something I wanted to comment around which Wachira said, that ideally, politics should not be a problem with unionism. Actually, in established democracies, like the Labour Party of the UK, you know, they are able to agitate, and when some of them were being formed through the steel workers of the UK and their rights. Exactly. And we should not be afraid, per se, as workers, to participate in the politics. Yeah? In fact, as Kenyan workers, we are getting a point that we want to form a workers' party. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Where we can get the political power, because we discovered that in this country, the ultimate power that moves things is the political power and the economic power. The workers don't have the economic power because we are workers, obviously, but we need the political power. We must be able to meet and negotiate, whether with the people who are vying for presidency or produce our own. Because we have like almost 1 million public servants in Kenya, supporting almost 10 people per worker. That's like 10 million Kenyans that we have direct control over. Yeah, I hear Minister of Public Service Moses Kuria saying that we have 1 million people taking 1.1 trillion of the budget, and leaving the other 53 million. The other 53 are being supported by us. As Ms. Keller, as I sit here, I support my mother, father, siblings, and other children. This is still part of the 54 million Kenyans. Okay. So as soon as the workers organize, they are saying that the only answer to greedy capital is organized labor. That when the owners of business, the owners of money, the employers want to maximize their profits, they'll do very crazy things. They'll want to make you work longer hours. They want to pay you less. They want to take away the leaves. But the labor must organize itself, and it organizes itself through the unions. Then soon we can get to a point where we can even start having our own members of parliament, senators. The only tragedy sometimes is that when people, based on the pettiness of our politics, First of all, when people get there, the same unionists that you think are going to fight for the fellow workers, they forget, number one. Number two, the issue that, like in Kenya right now, which like the Kotu SG finds himself in, that just simply because he supported one side, yeah, somebody he has now to lean on the other side. Yet, whatever he was doing, I understand that he had an idea of why he chose that particular way of doing things. But we have to get to a point that we get the political power as unions. We have to make the politicians see the pay the price of not taking care of the workers. Because what I discussed in the county is that most of the time the decisions that are made purely based on votes. For example, I used to work at, you get that somebody will not hire doctors, not hire nurses, or lab officers, but they will give you 4 ambulances for level 4. So you have 1 doctor or 2, but with 4 ambulances.
So it is impossible to delink politics from workers' rights.
Politics is about distribution of resources,
yes.
And workers want resources pulled towards their end. So the whole idea of distributing resources and giving the workers part of that money or resources is what politics is.
Shouldn't we therefore be supporting Francis Atwoli in his attempts to get inside government, to get a table there and negotiate from that position?
Fred, once bitten, twice shy. We've already seen what Papa has done to the Kenyan workers. I'm sorry to say so. When as workers, we had issues with the housing levy. He supported it. I don't know whether he got the majority thinking or it was because of politics. I think we've had very good examples of trade unionists, that is in this case secretary generals, who have been in politics. And once they join politics, they change the color. A very good example is Atwoli, because at one time he was before elections he was on the other side, but because he wanted to survive him as an individual in the current government, he actually sacrificed all the Kenyan workers and sacrificed all the trade unionists.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. We have on phone Senator Mohamed Faki of Mombasa. He is a member of the Senate Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Good morning, Senator. You're talking to Fred Indimuli at TV47. And I have a number of union leaders here. We have Dr. Miskela from KMPDU, Moriasi from NUMLO, and Peterson Washira joining us virtually. And we're wondering what the Kenyan worker could be celebrating today as we mark Labor Day. What do you feel about that?
I don't think we have anything to celebrate, because most of the gains that they had over the years have been eroded so much that there is nothing to write home about. If you look at their salaries, if you look at their purchasing power, all of them have been eroded. And I don't think the Kenyan worker currently has anything to celebrate.
Okay, Senator.
And then the other problem is that most of the unions now have been infiltrated by self-seekers to such an extent that once elected, they no longer champion the interest of the workers. They champion their own personal interests.
Okay.
And that is the sad situation of our labor unions in the country.
Okay, and what would you say about Parliament's role in this? One of the union leaders we've been speaking to, Bwana Peterson Washira, said that the current Parliament has done very little in as far as protecting the rights of workers, and probably that's where the weakness is. As a member of the Labour Committee of the Senate, what would you say about the role of Parliament in protecting the Kenyan worker?
To some extent, because you know, the problem with our parliament currently is that it has been emasculated by the executive. The role of a member of parliament is a role of a watchdog role. You play the role of an oversight. But now, if as a members of parliament feel that they are more executive than the executive, then that role cannot be accomplished. They feel that they owe more to the government because maybe it belongs to their political party or things like that. So much that they cannot champion any other right except whatever they are being told by the executive. So he is right to some extent that Parliament has sort of been overrun by the executive. But still, members of the minority do perform their respective roles in putting the government to check.
Okay.
That's why we opposed most of the bills that came in to protect, to derogate from the workers' interest. For instance, the housing bill is one of them. The social health bill is one of them. All this we opposed as a matter of principle because we knew our workers will be made to suffer.
Okay. What would you say to the fact that it is this same parliament that has been able to pass all the laws that these unions probably are complaining about, some of these issues, including higher taxation against the workers?
You know, Parliament, you make decisions based on the numbers. The majority normally have their say, their day, but the minority also has their say. So we try to convince other people from the majority side. But you know, if they are called in the morning, they are called in the morning to be informed that this is the way you are going to vote. Badai.
All right, and finally, Senator, before we let you go.
Yeah, they are going to vote this way.
Okay. Senator, before we let you go,
you cannot do much.
I'd want your quick comment on the conduct of the Central Organization of Trade Unions Secretary General Francis Atwoli. He's come under a lot of criticism over his dalliance with the executive, and many people are saying that that in itself has contributed to workers' rights.
You are right. You know, Atwoli has overstayed his welcome. He has been there for many years, but I know, he has overstayed in that position.
Okay.
Because of that overstaying, he no longer considers the general welfare of the workers as a paramount consideration. He's doing his own things, he's doing his own politics. And I think there's a bill currently in the Senate which seeks to limit the term limits of the leaders of the new union. I think 2 terms of 4 years or 2 terms of 3 years each will be adequate for them. Because, you know, if you look at Kotu, he worked with Moi, he worked with Kibaki, he worked now with Uhuru, he's now working with Ruto. You see, you cannot, even the new generation of trade unionists can no longer come out because those positions are already coveted to certain people. And therefore, they cannot break that ceiling to be able to lead the unions. And you know, new people have new ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, and therefore they are not allowed now to propagate those ideas. So you need. I think Atwoli has outlived his time.
Well, thank you so much, Faki Mohammed, Senator Mombasa, also a member of the Senate Labour Committee. And he said something there about the bill that's currently before Parliament, about limiting the term of union leadership. And when we consider the conduct of unions in themselves, and there's an admission that there is some weaknesses here and there, and probably if some leaders overstay their mandate, probably these weaknesses increase. Do you support that proposal to actually limit the terms of union leaders?
Personally, I don't believe in the idea of legislating laws with an individual in mind. Papa Atwoli will not be here forever. So putting up that law is neither here nor there. There are bigger problems that we are grappling with as workers of the world, not just workers of Kenya, that we can legislate about. There are better things that the parliament can put to place. For example, the casualization of work in this country. This idea that you can employ people on contract, we see them in KU, Kenyatta University Hospital, where they give doctors 1-month contracts. You see a patient today, tell them to come next month, you are gone. It's not possible to employ people on locums. There are bigger fights we can be dealing about. The idea about criminalization of strike, where right now there's no legal strike, you go through every step in avoiding a strike, the employer just ignores you, then you finally go on strike and they run to court and the court says, go back to work, the strike is illegal. Those are bigger things we can handle. The issue around the funding of unions, where somebody just wakes up one day, goes on TV, says that I will not collect for you the union dues from the workers. Yet the law is very clear that it is your duty, so as you recognize a union, for you to deduct from the members and send. That's how they killed NAT. They simply refused to deduct the money. TSC refused that, and that's how NAT ended up struggling, and then they propped up a second union called Kupet. Yeah, the issue around how we have politicized our public servants, public service. No, previously, when we, as a union, when we knew that when you are dealing with the technocrats, then you'll be able to reach a certain level of competence, meet people who know what should be done. But right now in this country, you meet technocrats who they have no idea. Everything is at the whims of a politician. That's what we are struggling with, like in KMPD, with the ministry, that there are people who are there. Because no civil service never changes. The presidency will change, the MPs, ministers, but the core civil service never changes. And these people are like, we're there for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. They know these things inside out. You find yourself with a civil service that right now, even the most basic of things like what is struggling with this, just a recognition agreement to recognize a union. People have to sit and you have to consult the minister, the president, you have to consult the governor on very basic things. Those are bigger things that we should be focusing on. I don't think that the idea that putting a lot that people can, the term limit, that's neither here nor there. Because these people also are elected. They are subjected to elections every other time. And if their members feel at any given point that they are comfortable with that, it's okay. Also, it's a journey of the willing. Unionism is not where you're forcing people to join. It's not a cult. It's something that you willingly join, you willingly leave. So if at one point you feel like court is not representing you as KMPD, we just stop remitting to them and look for maybe another trade center, maybe TUC is within our rights. So I think that's the thing that we need to focus on. The other thing that I'm struggling with that is that world over, if you look at the trade movement world over, the future of the trade movement is getting bleaker and bleaker. And people have to be more creative in how they want to take this forward. For example, think about the gig economy where somebody just hires you for a certain period, then lets you go. Or maybe you just want to work virtually. Where do you ever guys get time to meet? Or the remote work. Now we talk about technology and remote work. Yeah. So the unionism is about people sharing common experiences. You go for lunch together. You suffer the same fate from this really crazy boss and all those kind of stuff. So if you cannot be able to meet, even to interact, then we'll never get to a point of jailing to form a union. Okay. So the future of work is a little bit tricky, and I believe that it behoves the unions to become more creative. Yeah.
Are you saying that the unions have been, Moriasi, do you agree that unions probably have become too slow to change, to adopt to the nature of work that is presenting itself in this day and age? That probably they're becoming more moribund?
I think that will not be the case unless maybe we talk of individual unions. Because what I can see from a very good example of KMBDU, my brothers here are fighting for the welfare of their doctors or their members in a situation whereby we have a CBA that was signed. The government is trying to give excuses that maybe that was a different government and these are different governments. So talking from my perspective as a Secretary General of the Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers, I cannot say as a union of faith or a movement, unless maybe specific unions. Okay. Like now we have given an example of the umbrella body that is really giving us problems. You see, the doctors are going up 40 plus days on strike because of the interest of their members. Just the same to clinic officers and the same to the laboratory union. Okay. Yeah.
Now, I'm looking at this press statement that was sent on Monday this week ahead of the collective industrial action by all public sector workers. And one of the, I think KMPDU is part of this. And you've listed about 3 or 4 issues. And this is away from even the things that you're talking about as a KMPDU. And that one of them is a change of employment terms. And this proposal has come as part of the discussion on reducing the public sector wage bill, which is something that even the unions should be part of this discussion. Do you agree with that proposal? And how do you think, if at all, this government pursues that, how different will it be for the Kenyan worker?
I think in the conversation around the wage bill, it's a very, very misplaced conversation, in my opinion. Why do I say that? Because there's lack of genuineness in whatever is happening. The same government that is holding a wage bill conference on the wage bill wants to hire CASs and pay them ludicrous amounts of money. Yeah, so you cannot speak from both sides of the mouth. My more important to that, this idea that contract employment is cheaper is something that governors can speak better about, because the point that governors started employing healthcare workers on contract things that are going to be cheaper, but it's not cheaper because at the end of the contract you have to pay the gratuity. Yeah, some governors, based on lack of foresight or insight, thought that if you're in contract you can't go on strike. The Labor Relations Act is very clear that an employee can belong to a union, participate in it, whether you're on permanent and pensionable or on contract. The only thing that we should be talking about is productivity. I feel that the public service in Kenya, we have not given the citizens value for money. That's what we should be talking about, that if you are a doctor and we pay you and you do everything that you want, are you able to stay there and work? If you work in the passport...
Is that a concern for the union? Because especially when it comes to service delivery, is the union really bothered about the service delivery of its members?
You know, if the employer did its part and made us do our part, we'll not have to really... We'll probably pay attention to that. But no, on one side, you cannot be holding this difficult employer, belligerent employer with one hand and try also to talk to your members. If they just they did their part and don't have to be on 49 days of a strike, then I would get time to tell my members that for this CBA that has been honored and has been implemented, why can't you also give value? Go to work, this number of hours and all that. This passport issuance officer, how do they feel when somebody waits for 1 year for a passport and you're a civil servant drawing a salary? So that value for money is something that we should be able to inculcate and build within our civil service. Also, the other issue that I want to talk about is that let us not look at strikes as a bad thing. Because, you know, sometimes people think that maybe when there are strikes happening, maybe there's a broken down collective bargaining. No. As workers, we only have one power. You know, the employer has the power to fire, they have the power to hire, to stop salaries, to transfer, demote and all that. The workers only have the power to collectively bargain. The solidarity is what they have. And this solidarity can be used to negotiate, to talk, because you can collectively bargain. Individually, you can just beg. Yeah. So when you have this employer who has refused, and he says it so well, that can refuse to come to the table to negotiate, refuse to honor agreement, then the only power that workers are left with are the powers to withdraw their skills, power to withdraw their labor. Because that's not the only thing that can then force the employer back to the table. And so we must never deny workers that power to collectively picket, to go strike. And I really thank our constitution and our governments because they've allowed us the latitude to enjoy and test every article around the labor laws in this country, both in the Act and the Constitution. And we appreciate it. We know that there are certain countries where whatever we are enjoying, even as doctors here, cannot be enjoyed. But then, beyond just allowing us to picket on the streets freely, what else can that law reassure us of as workers of the world?
Okay, and I can see Bwana Peterson Wachira is back with us. So just before we come to you, Bwana Wachira, Muriasi, you want to...
Just to add on something about this, the announcement by the Cabinet Secretary, Moses Kuria, on the issue of contracts, converting all the permanent and pensionable employees' terms to contracts. For one, this is trying to run away from giving a solution to the current stalemate. And using intimidation or rather threats to threaten the Kenyan workers who are rightfully on strike. They are in a legal strike that is very well protected by the Labor Relations Act. Talking of converting all, I don't know whether it means in the county or the national. And for one, Fred, the CS is not an employer of any of the striking workers. I really wonder where he gets the powers to say that he's going to do this and this. He's not an employer. He's not speaking on behalf of the Public Service Commission or on behalf of the county public service boards. If you talk, you give an healthcare worker a contract of 3 months, we have such kind of scenarios where, for example, I'm an employee of a certain county, I'm employed permanent and pensionable, doing the same job with a certain gentleman who is employed by the hospital board, getting 15,000, and that 15,000 is not a guaranteed. It comes after 3 months, after every 3 months. So when you talk of productivity, there must be a difference there. Okay. The output Because if this person who is on contract is actually a demoralized employee, he cannot be able to perform his or her own duties well. And when such kind of scenarios happen, is that it is the patients who are going to suffer, because I will not be fully dedicated to offer my services. Yeah. With or without these intimidations, as a Kenyan worker who is employed by the government, I have a responsibility to discharge my duties when I have good working environment, but not threats and intimidations. It's high time that the CS and the government take action. That it's not necessary that we must use threats when solving a stalemate between workers. You can bring some ideas on the table so that you can end these perennial issues. These strikes have been there for quite some time, and it's high time that since the Kenya Kwanza government, before it came to power, these healthcare unions you are seeing here, we were part of the manifesto of the president. He called us at a Catholic university, and we gave
the charter.
Yes, we signed a charter. We are wondering today, we are doing a lot of PR with universal health coverage, and at the end of the day, the government is not committed to it. It's just PR.
Let's bring in Bwana Peter Sonashira back into this conversation. Apologies, we lost the signal earlier. And I'm just examining this this statement issued by public service sector trade unions, which includes the Union of Clinical Officers. And just examining some of the things raised in this document. One of them is a change of employment terms, and is what the two gentlemen here have been looking at. And I don't know what you have to say about that proposal to change the employment terms for public service workers from permanent and pensionable to contracts.
Thank you. And allow me to probably first comment about what Mheshimiwa talked about, limiting the term limits for union officials. And let me say that I think effectiveness of a union official is not affected by how long they are there. It is affected by some individual issues that may be probably also based on personality and other things, but not on the duration. And also under the Constitution, Article 41, it gives a direct right to the unions to determine their own structure, programs, and activities. So how do they then want to limit something that is given in the Constitution? If it's management of the unions, if we had an issue with the management of the unions, then that solution should be proposed from either the unions themselves or from the workers, who are the direct consumers of the unions. Members of parliament are not unionizable. They are not members of any union. Who took a petition to them and told them that there is a problem with the term limits or the duration that officials are staying in some of the unions? Because then, if they are going to limit, we don't know how much they are going to limit it, and they may limit to the disadvantage. If you are in any administration, and probably you have very short-term limits, sometimes before you learn about the administration of that particular organization, then you are replaced. And when that then takes root and becomes a trend, then you find that those institutions do not work well, because most of the time the people who are at the helm are learning. So I think in short what I'm saying is that there is a direct right under Article 41 of the Constitution for the unions to determine their own structure, programs, and activities. And that is not the role of Parliament. If any right is to be limited, it must be limited as also provided, I think, under Article 24 of the Constitution. Okay. There must be an Act of Parliament, and that Act of Parliament must then show that that limitation is something that is justifiable in an open and democratic society, and that that limitation does not negate the objective that was set by that right. Oh. And for me, I don't think they really have a role. I don't think there is anybody who has gone to them and filed a petition. And I think for me, they are not welcome. They should allow the unions to run their course.
All right.
Having talked about that, please allow me to also comment about changing the terms of employment. And I want to say that I don't know who is advising the CS, but I think whoever is advising him on that is really misleading him. Because there are laws in this country. any public institution must be guided by the prevailing laws. And according to Public Service Commission Act, if you look at section 44 and other sections there, you realize that the main mode of engagement in the civil service is permanent and pensionable. And it actually says that if you are going to put anybody on a contract, then you as the employer in the public service, you must justify that the person you are engaging on contract does not qualify to be engaged on any other terms, and any other terms, because we only have two terms. One is permanent and pensionable, the other one is contract. So you must justify that the person you're employing on contract does not qualify to be employed on permanent and pensionable. Now, when it comes to the casualization of labor, because there is a bigger scheme, Fred, and we know it, whatever they are saying, they are just attracting attention and creating narratives to distract us. There is a bigger scheme in the health sector, and number one is reduction of salaries. There are some people who feel like in the health sector, people are earning much, where actually our people are running away to other countries to look for greener pastures. Mm-hmm. And that is why you can see them reducing the wages for the salaries for the interns, so that if you accept a meager salary during internship, then you are going to accept a meager salary when you are being employed, because you'll get used to living at that level. And number two, they also want to create these short-term contracts going forward, so that then they can integrate it with the political system, where you can imagine in some of the counties, and it's already happening. You saw that, like in Nakuru, for example, you saw the incoming governor, the governor come in and sack almost half of the workers who are on contract and bring in new ones. And what they are trying to do, because we have politicized our public service, as my brother Ms. Keller is saying, is that there is a very big push from the politicians to also have these contracts going between 3 and 5 years. Okay. So that now, as politicians comes in with every electioneering cycle, then you're also going to have the public service also changing with the politics of the day. But the question that must be asked, because this country must look beyond politics, we must look beyond the term limits for the elected officials, and we must look at the posterity of the development, the socio-economic development we want to bring, and especially in the health sector. Okay. Because we have documented in under Vision 2030 that by 2030, we want a country where other people will come from all over the world, and Kenya will be a medical tourism center. That is very well documented. Okay. And if you read the Vision 2030 on the same, it actually breaks it down that we want our health workers to also specialize. We also want to build specialized hospitals, so that then you can attract somebody from South Africa, because they know there is a specialty that can only be found in Kenya. But then now these policies that we are seeing, they are policies that are being brought by people who do not understand the greater vision. They are just looking at the electioneering cycles. How can I be able to control the public service when I'm in office? How can I be able to determine how I reward my people when I get into the office, other than looking at posterity, looking at the long-term socio-economic development of our country. Okay. And I think as technocrats, that's why I'm saying that as workers we must rise, because we are the people. Okay. We are the only people who can actually give the civic education to the common man down there, to Anjiko down there, to understand that at some point their politicians have actually veered off the line, and that Kenyans must come out, they must call them out, and we must hook them back into the line.
Bwana Wachira, let's stop there for now. We take a break. We'll be back to continue this conversation. Remember, on the other set, we still have the lawyers telling us more about labor rights as we continue with our special coverage of Labor Day 2024. You're watching Morning Cafe. We continue with our special coverage of Labor Day celebrations, and in studio we still have union leaders Peterson Wachira of KUKO, Nyakundi Muriasi of NUMLO, and Dr. Dennis Miskela of KMPDU. And Dr. Miskela, I know we have to release you because you have to attend to the celebrations later this morning. But before we let you go, there's one thing I wanted you to address, and still as part of the issues raised in that press statement titled Public Service Sector Under Attack by Government, is the issue of emasculation, and it's the very last item listed there, emasculation of trade unions. What exactly are you talking about when you say this? Is it only on the issue of defunding?
You know, the tragedy of the current public servants is that they think that public service is a personal property or some gift you're being given for vying or for winning an election or for being the right political side. But we must know that public service is about a calling to service, where you know you are there for a season, for a period, and you're gone. So when you see some of the decisions that are being made by government officers, when you hear CS Kuria talk about, so long as I'm alive, I will not allow this. You know, this country will exist longer than you. There are people who have come and gone. I know we had a song the other day that unions will remain. People will come and go. Because when in 2011, we had Professor Nyang Nyong as the CS for Health.
Oh, are you part of that famous choir on
I was a composer. I was a composer.
Okay.
Yeah. And Nyang Nyong came and left. We had Cecily Kaduki came and left. Mailu came and left. Everybody has been going. Even Miskela will come and go. But the unions will remain.
Chama
kitasimama.
Yes.
But what about Peter? Chama kitasimama. So if public servants came to understand that as duty bearers, they have a role to play, and you do it as perfect or near perfection, like what General Ogola did, where long after you are gone, people will remember what you did. So this idea of fighting unions, you won't succeed. See what they are doing with the teachers, the JSS teachers. You're a teacher, qualified at everything, then they call you an intern. They call you that not because they don't know that you're a teacher, but if you want to kill a dog, give it a bad name. If you want to underpay a teacher, call him an intern. For the doctor interns, they tell them they're students. Yeah, they want to underpay them, call them students. Yeah, so that idea of making the workers feel less is part of the way of killing the union. Now we have an internship policy being made by the ministry saying that interns can't join a union. Mm-hmm. Come on, you're a minister. This is just a policy. The law is clear that any worker has a right to join a union. Yeah. Then the other thing I want to, as I finish that, this hate or this fear towards unions, where when somebody hears a unionist, they're like, no, we can't engage you. They're scared of you. They must know that unions built the middle class. Okay. Unions gave us 40 hours a week. Unions gave us maternity leaves, paternity leaves. Unions gave us promotions. We are here where we are because unions negotiated better terms for the workers of the world. And my clarion call to the duty bearers, the government and the employers, that look at unions as partners who can help you become better. Because you all need someone to remind us of how to be better. To the workers, keep on being strong. Keep on being united. Because I repeat, the only answer to a greedy capital is organized labor. Organize yourself in whatever way. Right now, I'm trying to push for the taxi guys who have this amorphous employer. You have your own car. Are you an employee? Are you an employer? You don't know. So we must get creative with the changing times and the changing workplace. We must get creative and remain together despite everything that is being thrown at us. Our unity is our strength. Because individually, you'll beg. Collectively, you'll bargain. Thank you and happy Labor Day to all the workers of the world.
Chama kitasimama. Dr. Dennis Miskela. Come again. Chama
kitasimama. Chama kitasimama. Mambo yote yatapita lakini chama kitasimama.
Right. Dr. Dennis Miskela, Deputy Secretary General KMPDU. He has to leave the set now. But even as we continue this conversation with Peterson Wachira and Nyakundi Muriasi, let me hand you over now to Stanley Nyaringita to continue with the discussion on labor rights.
Right, Fred, it seems as if we're going to be singing a lot this particular morning. But in any case, before I my set, I do have lawyers just to try and understand as a worker, what are your rights on the same? But then before that, I want to take you all the way to Uhuru Gardens, where Anne Odita, as well as Paul Kirobi, your very own, are standby there. Anne Odita, Paul Kirobi, a very good morning to you. Happy Labor Day to you. Tell us, how is the mood and feel in Uhuru Gardens right about now? Are Kenyans celebrating this particular Labor Day, the 59th Labor Day, in happiness or in sorrowness? Tell us.
Well, a very good morning to you, Stanley. Happy Labor Day to you. Just to start us off, it is a very chilly morning right here at Uhuru Gardens. It's raining, but we can see that Kenyans are starting to come in. The situation here, not so many Kenyans are here, but we are beginning to see the security is also tight outside. We're also seeing Kenyans. If the camera person can just pan, it's not too strong yet, but we are expecting for Kenyans to be here. Remember that today is a day that 80 countries across the globe has set aside to celebrate workers, and we will be, formerly Labor Day was known as May Day, and later it was renamed to International Day of Workers before it was named Labor Day. So today we will be expecting to see dignitaries, we will be expecting to see government officials, including President William Ruto. We will be seeing central organizations, trade unions, Federation of Kenya Employers, the Labour Ministry, that includes the Cabinet Secretary for Labour, Florence Bore. And remember that it's important to note, Stanley, that public servants should brace for stagnated payroll, even as the government races towards achieving a 35% wage bill to revenue ratio by 2028. And right here, as it is at the moment, President William Ruto, remember, had remarked that the government is currently battling with a high wage bill, which is becoming quite hard for the government to manage. So the government is looking forward to reducing the wage bill so that it can be able to really just caution Kenyans against the spiraling high cost of living. Let me hand over to my colleague, Paul Kirobi.
Definitely, just like you've just said, Odida, pertaining to today's celebration, the 59th Labor Day celebrations, which is being held here at the Uhuru Gardens. There is a lot that is expected today as far as the workers' rights are concerned, the policies that they need to be streamlined in order to ensure that workers benefit when they work, because wanasema katika lugha ya Kiswahili kwamba mpeni ya Kaisare liyo Kaisare, and today is going to be a special day, but again it's not a special day because I think this is the first celebration under President William Ruto's government since he took power in the year 20. This is the second one. However, today there are reports that probably we are going to have another event at the Kenyatta International Convention Center that is headed by Charles Mukwana, but it's called Tuko. Yeah, contrary to the other one for KOTU. The other one is Trade Union Central Organization. And probably they had actually they rejected the invitation to attend to this particular event that is going to happen today. And again, why I'm saying today is a special day, it comes at a time already we've seen the 1.5 housing levy that are being deducted from workers. Then what does this really mean to workers, more especially those who are getting, let's say, a salary of 20,000 or 15,000? Then it simply means already they have been deducted last month. And keeping in mind that the cost of living has not gone down the way so many Kenyans expected. And today President William Ruto is expected to grace this particular occasion because this is the main event. And therefore there is much expectation from Kenyans and workers in general.
That's very right. We can also just record that in July we will also be seeing deduction from SHIF, that is the Social Health Insurance Fund, a first of its kind coming in July, and that will also reflect just a drop in Kenyans' payroll at a time when Kenyans are still battling with the high cost of living as we are trying to rebound economically. Well, we can also remember that during the third National Wage Bill that was conference that was held last month, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission chairperson, that is Lynn Mengich, said that civil servants will not have an upward review of their salaries, and employers are also advised not to do so, not to review their salaries upwards, rather, in order to really just manage the current high wage bill that is being experienced in the country. According to SRC, last month they said that this move will achieve fiscal sustainability and harmonization. And this also comes at a time when these celebrations comes at a time when Kenyans are mourning the loss of its countrymen and women who have died in the floods that are currently being experienced in the country. It's so unfortunate that while we are fighting for the rights. The Kenyans are fighting for the rights of workers. There are people somewhere who've lost everything that they've had. So we're also looking forward to see what the president and the leaders here will have to say about that. And remember that right now, as we are reviewing also the salaries, we see that the current minimum wage bill is at 15,000, and this was reviewed in 2022 by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. This was not reviewed in 2023 last year when President William Ruto held his very first Labor Day celebrations. And at that time, the Court Secretary General wanted the president to review the minimum, to increase the minimum wage bill by 50%, but that was not done since President William Ruto said the government was expected to adopt a radical remuneration policy that was supposed to be responsive to the cost of living, where the minimum wage bill was expected to be guided by sustainability and productivity. Well, Stanley, according to the 2022 revision, the minimum wage bill still stands at 20%, still stands at, was increased by 12%. And currently in the major cities, that is in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu City, the minimum wage bill is at 15,201 Kenyan shillings. That is from 13,000 that was increased in 2022, and before it's increased to by that 12% right now at 15,000 Kenyan shillings. The 4 years before 2022, it was stagnated at that 13,000 Kenyan shillings, and this was increased to just caution Kenyans against the high cost of living that was occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Definitely, COVID-19 is one of the things that was a major blow, more especially to people who were employed, because we understand that after COVID-19, under President Ruto's regime, almost 1 year plus since he took power, there is a lot that has happened as far as the cost of living is concerned, just like the way you've mentioned. And so many workers today are expected. That is one of the key concern that should come from the president. Because looking at the numbers of people who are currently right here at the Uhuru Gardens, the number is quite very low. I never expected this one from exactly 9 a.m. However, we can also see the weather is quite not good as well.
That's very right. Now, just to take you to just review, to tell you some of the examples of now what people will be earning, or what rather people are earning currently with the minimum wage bill, before we hand over to you, Stanley. Remember, the current hourly minimum wage in the Kenya's capital, that is Nairobi, stands at 63 Kenyan shillings, that is hourly. And we see like a career like a cleaner, a gardener, a house managers, those are messengers. Their minimum wage bill is 15,201 Kenyan shillings. We have car drivers who are getting 20,517 Kenyan shillings, and we have night security guards who are also getting 16,958 salaries. That's it from us, Stanley. We are going to keep tabs.
Odida, before you return back to studio, you've just outlined some of the salaries that the minimum salary that some people are earning, like 60,000, 15,000, 20,000. We also understand the nannies have also been advocating for the payment increase. But today is, let's say it's a D-Day. However, under President Ruto's regime, we understand he has been advocating for looking for jobs abroad for Kenyans, and this is something that he has really tried, looking at the number of Kenyans who've been actually tried to go abroad and work there, and then they bring development in Kenya. But looking at the aim of that particular move was to raise more revenue for the country in order to ensure that as a nation, or rather as a government, is able to achieve the target. So we expect probably when we approach mwezi wa sita there in Swahili, the president, looking at the budget, is going to actually see how they will allocate different ministries and how things are going to move on.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Kirobi, I think it's only right for us to also say that maybe we should also expect maybe a salary increase later on. All right, thank you so much, Stanley. From us, we will be keeping tabs right here to bring you up to speed with everything that is happening at Uhuru Gardens as it continues to fill up. Back to you in studio, Stanley.
And Odita and Kirobi, before I let you finish, a quick one, because early in the morning we were taking a look at the traffic along Langata Road. It was a whole red line. That means there was a whole traffic snarl up. Just tell us, because you have told us that the population, the number of people who are there at the moment is quite low. But then how is the traffic like getting into Uhuru Gardens for someone who's watching us this morning and they'd really like to go to Uhuru Gardens?
Well, Stanley, the roads are clear. By the time we got here, it was clear there wasn't any traffic because there are tight security outside. So we will say that those that are planning to come in here for these celebrations are free to come here. And I am sure they're going to get in time because there's no traffic from what we really experience. I think maybe we can say that there's no many people who are here at the moment because of the weather. It's quite raining over here. So we can't really attribute it to the traffic because there is no traffic at the roads leading here at Uhuru Gardens. Stanley.
Right. Thank you very much, Odita, and as well as Paul Kirobi just standing by there. Those are live pictures at Uhuru Gardens for the 59th celebrations of Labour Day. We'll be giving more details and we'll be getting back to Odita as well as Paul Kirobi, the whole team right there for a clearer update just to see who will be arriving and who will be streaming. As they do, we'll be giving you those live updates. Right in studio, giving you a whole bit of analysis from the trade union leaders as well as the lawyers themselves. We did have Ms. Keller, but then he did leave. But then right about now, Fred on the other side, having Nyakundi Muriasi Pius, who's the CEO of Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers, as well as virtually Peterson Washira, who's the national chair of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. But then on my side, I do have lawyers, Saleh Sakiro, as well as Ruth Tanui, both advocates of the High Court. Now, before we did take a short break, Peterson Washira, the chair of Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, mentioned something very interesting, that domestic workers in Kenya are rushing out there for greener pastures, quote unquote. But then now on the legal lands from the both of you, do they have laws that they actually are protecting them? Because when we started, we're talking about this is a Kenyan employee right here in Kenya. But what happens if they cross the borders? Are there set specific laws that actually govern and protect these workers? We have seen cases of migrant workers, particularly in parts of Saudi Arabia, who are mistreated. But then the follow-up on some of these cases really raises questions. Are they going to use the laws of Saudi Arabia or Kenya? But we do, there are also the international labor rights. Tell us about that today.
Also, okay. As Kenyans, we are party to various international laws. So there is also the International Labour Convention where we are party to.
Okay.
But then the last Labour Day celebration, President Ruto had promised to, we have a convention for domestic workers, which protects them to ensure they have decent work. It was supposed to, but we are yet to ratify it. As much as we are a party to international laws, we have to actually first ratify it for it to be implemented in Kenya.
Well,
so
why haven't we, maybe from your understanding, what has taken it that long?
I don't understand what has taken long, but it's the AG who starts the process.
Okay.
But the International Commission, the International Labour Commissioner Helen, I said, I think I read in the newspaper, she said that they're in the process of doing it. Because last time they had promised they'll ratify it. There's a convention now that will protect those domestic workers. So but as Kenyans, we have not ratified it.
So what's the danger of this delay?
The danger is now it can't be, they can't, just like a law, if a law doesn't apply to you, you can't use it to protect you. So the danger is it's affecting now that the workers can't, because it's ensuring their decent work, like right to like even gender-based violence, because some experience violence during those when they're the domestic workers because they're working in personal households. So that means if we have not ratified it, we cannot use it. You cannot use it to defend yourself in law. Yeah, so those are some of the dangers. It has to be ratified for us to actually implement it in Kenya. or as a Kenyan, you can implement it as a Kenyan, as a right. Yes.
Right. And so far, Akira, we've talked about unions and the choice of an employee to actually get into a union. For these migrant workers, there is a union, for Kenya Union of Domestic, Hotel, Educational Institutions, Hospitals, and Allied Workers. And they can actually get into this. But then now, for such a case where this worker went to work in Saudi Arabia and was treated by the employer there, tell us how is this case treated, matters, contracts, how different is it for Kenya as well as the international laws on the same?
Now, Stanley, we always handle cases based on a common law doctrine, which is usually common in the succession causes, called lex domicile, meaning the law of the place of residency. So when a worker leaves Kenya for Saudi Arabia, the most prominent laws to be utilized will be the Saudi Arabian laws. The contracts will be drawn in regards to the laws of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. However, we have different international organizations and these different treaties, as my colleague counsel have just intimated. By virtue of Article 2.5 of the Constitution of Kenya, every instrument ratified by the Republic of Kenya forms part and parcel of the laws of the Republic. For instance, we have the diaspora policy, that is what currently can be relied on, because the diaspora policy of 2014 is the one that is operational. I've checked and seen there is a draft diaspora policy for 2024, which is yet to be operationalized. But when you look at the policy, it actually galvanizes different players from the interior, from the foreign affairs, East African affairs. You go to labor institutions, social workers, and whatever. They are all multifaceted agencies that have been galvanized together to make sure that the workers' rights are protected abroad. The embassies are actually chiefly charged with executing these things. But remember, the policy actually intimated the creation or the registration of this, what we call workers' agencies, and their registration. So before an agent takes you abroad, you have to check and confirm that this agent is actually registered. And because their registration, they have a part to play in your contractual agreements in Saudi Arabia. Okay. Some of them say, give us this much, we are processing your passports, we are processing your contract aside, and then we'll take commissions. So they are actually to play, and the embassies are actually have to be notified. But first and foremost, Kenya is actually rapidly developing protection of workers. There is a bill, it is called Kenyan Migrant Workers Management Bill 2023, which is still under scrutiny and debating. Once it is assented to by the president, it will formally become part of the law of the land. And by that, it means that every migrant worker, whether migrating into or emigrating outside the country, will actually be chiefly governed by that relations. But even as I finalize on this aspect by your question, the chief law that will actually be operationalized, Kenya has, first of all, to give priority to the law of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in terms of how everything is managed inside there. But remember, we have stated that the international laws set a bare footstool, a bare minimum for all workers across the country, across the nations. So if there is a disparity between what is provided for by the international conventions from what is provided for by the laws of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, then there will be an international uproar, And that is where now you see people going live on media, please protect us, we need protection, because they know actually by instinct they have a right, which is being abrogated by the employers in Saudi Arabia.
So in the face of Saudi Arabia itself, it's probably, if you're to look at the laws of the land of Saudi Arabia, for them, this employer knows that I am safe. Is that right, Tanwe?
Yes, because it's just like now you can use it as Kenya. Kenyans, we have laws that protect employees. So if you are an immigrant in Kenya, looking at our laws, they protect you. So you know that, yeah, you're protected by the laws of that country. You have a right based on the laws of that country.
But then now, because earlier on, both of you were saying the whole matter is ignorance and not really admissible in the court of law. But then this was in a situation in Kenya. You employed by a Kenyan employer or Kenyan. It is expected that you at least understand a few sections of this whole acts of the Constitution. But then now this is a worker who has migrated to Saudi Arabia. And before this worker went all the way there, the various parties involved. There's the agent, as you're saying, until this person actually reaches the employer. Whose mandate is it to tell and inform this worker, this migrant worker, that these are your rights when you come to this land?
I think it's the same thing, but I think the agency plays a role in informing the workers. But I think also you as a person, though, it's the same thing. Ignorance is not a defense in law. You have to at least, if you're going to another country to go and do, maybe if you're a domestic worker, at least you have to look at the laws that are going to protect you in case something happens. Just like I'm sure they look at a situation where, like the visa application, a passport, you look at the laws that you look at how long will you stay, what if you want to stay longer. So the same thing applies to employment. So you have to at least, I feel it's supposed to be your mandate, because the way I've said ignorance, you can't claim I didn't know.
Yeah.
And also the agencies but it's just unfortunate in Kenya, most agencies are not registered, because they should be, because if as an agency, the agency is supposed to be the one, because the embassy is already informed that you're in your country. So at least they should be having that where if you're in trouble, you have a contact that you can contact in such a situation. Yeah, but the mandate also is, as a Kenyan, it's your mandate to know your rights. You take the time to look at your rights under the law, no matter which area of the part of the world you are in. Because remember, like, these laws have been put there to protect you, but no one is going to like come and tell you that this is supposed to be your right. Employers will do what fits their business.
Right.
Yes. So what I would say is, as a Kenyan, and just ensure you understand. You don't have to understand deeply. Understand your rights. And sometimes most lawyers give consultations, just general. Wakil was saying a legal opinion. Basically, even if you're migrating out of Kenya, it doesn't even any work. You can even just go to a lawyer and get a legal opinion based on, like, in case I fall into a legal trouble or if this happens, and the lawyer can give you a good legal opinion. Of course, you'll pay some fees. Okay. Yes.
Akira smiling on the whole bit of the package kidogo. Anyway, before we actually wrap up this whole bit of migrant workers, because it is always a thorn in the flesh. Even in Kenya, we've seen Kotu Secretary Francis Atwoli come out and say how even as a union, they're really going to even protect and ensure they're protected on the same. So first of all, as let's say a union formed here in Kenya, how does it mandate also extend across the borders, first of all, and also something that I'd love both of you to also tell me. Are there any gaps as both professionals? Do you think there are any gaps when it comes to the laws protecting migrant workers, Akira?
Beginning by to what extent do Kenyan unions stretch their powers and mandate? We remember every union in the land is actually watched or monitored by the International Labour Organization. At one point, I remember Francis Atwoli, I don't know whether he was the president or the deputy president of that organization. And so just as the unions within the country have to work within the frameworks set by, or at least incorporate the bare standards set by the International Labour Organization, stemming from the conventions. The same, the unions in
Saudi Arabia,
the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, are also are supposed to align with those minimum. If, remember what my colleague said, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia actually ratified. If they do not ratify, then remember it is the Kenyan who is actually dipping himself or herself inside the frying pan. If you know that the country you're going to has no laws to protect you, then you go there at your own risk.
So, for example, and just to add on this, because both of you also told us that this worker has the right to join a union. They have joined and formed a union in Saudi Arabia, a huge number of the migrant workers there. Are they also allowed to picket in Saudi Arabia? And these are Kenyan migrant workers, and they've had the number of cases of mistreatment, and they decide we're going to picket in a foreign land.
No, the question is, Stanley, yeah, we have certain countries that allow union of foreign nationals, where foreign nationals organize themselves into, and they have their lawyers, of course, within the country that help them to monitor the laws and how they're supposed to follow these laws.
Okay.
And so, to the Kenyans abroad, the question normally becomes, how can we bring ourselves together?
Okay.
Because what the stories we've seen, once they reach there, they're isolated. Somebody has been taken to the southernmost part of the country and then enclosed within a house, taking care of a granny there, and the whole story that is there. So for them to find themselves together and say that now our date for picketing is here. Because if the constitution of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia provides for picketing and demonstrations, then there is then there is the policy of equal or minimum treatment for all foreign nationals. Those are international law standards. That the same way you treat your nationals, there should be that equality or minimum treatment for the foreign nationals as your nationals.
Okay.
But then that means that the foreign nationals within your country, the Kenyans in Saudi Arabia, they will also are subjected to the same treatment, and so they are supposed to join. And
it should be a level playing field.
Exactly.
Right. Because of time, I'd love to, even as you get into the gaps that are in the laws of migrant workers, but then also because this is an issue that has been raised even on the other side, the union leaders were talking about this really, the employment terms. Now, help us understand in the legal eyes, because this is really going to be affecting even public service workers, really, the whole matters. Because I know we talked about the whole contracts, we did, but then help us also understand this whole bit of, as we were talking about it, the whole employment terms. But then first off, do you feel like there are gaps in the rights and the laws to protect the migrant workers?
Yeah, I think there are the gaps, and the gaps are clear. For instance, I think now the way my colleague has said, people are scattered. And I think the embassy, the Kenyan embassy now in those countries, like for instance Saudi Arabia, are the ones who are supposed to take that mandate to ensure they have a list of all their nationals. But now unfortunately also them, I think it's because a lot of agencies are involved. These agencies that take people, they don't actually, maybe they're not legal, so they don't register these people legally. So that becomes an issue. So even fighting for your rights becomes hard. You know, it's easier in Kenya for doctors to come together. But now when you're outside, unless you know how many Kenyans are here, where you have even a group, the union actually mates, you know who's your leader, it makes things easier. So those are some of the gaps that become, and also now you are reliant, like for instance now Kenya, we are still waiting for Kenya to ratify the domestic water. So now you see now it's beyond them. So those are some of the gaps. And also I can also say that the other gap is, for instance now, like the way my colleague was stating, that the laws of that, you are limited to the laws of that country. So for instance, if you are going to a country where the laws don't protect you, you are limited to that. So as a Kenyan, you have to not make a choice while now going to that country. Now you understand now the consequence of that.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Now to the final bit, and final question before I throw it back to Fred. The employment terms of this, the government really pushing for the whole contracts, pensionable bit of it. Help us understand, even for public service worker watching us this morning.
You're talking about the wage minimum?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think first this wage, the one they are trying to push the wage minimum, I think it has been as a result of now where the doctors, the interns are trying to raise the amount. You know, these things of bringing in the minimum, they're trying to limit the wages for employees. So, and when you have come into an agreement, especially now the collective bargaining agreement, I think the government was aware of what they were entering into. Right. They agreed to these terms. There were people who had capacity to come into these terms. So I don't think now the government now is taking a risk, because right now when people are fighting, the doctors are fighting for their rights. The rights to health for Kenyans is being affected. So I think the government should at least honor, because the CBA, we were talking with the head of I was telling him that it's going to set a very bad precedent if they go against this CBA agreement, because so far it has not been ratified. It has not been invalidated. Okay. It was registered with the LRC, so they're supposed to abide by it. Right. As much as that they're the government, they're not supposed to go against the law. Right. And it is going to set a very bad precedence if the government itself is going against the agreement.
Right.
Yes.
Allow me to pick your final thoughts and advice to a worker out here, an employee, an employer, as well as take this opportunity to wish someone happy Labor Day. I'll start with you, Akira, before I throw it back to Fred.
Well, thank you so much, Stanley, for having us in studio today. Try as much as you can, if you are an employee who is unionizable, to enter into a trade union and be protected and be an active member of the trade union or the employee organizations within your company.
Right.
Happy Labor Days to, first of all, yourself.
Thank you very much.
Being
happy
a
Labor Day to you.
Thank you. And of course, I'll also wish my beloved wife a happy Labor Day today.
Ungekosa.
Kungekuwa na shida.
Chakula ya leo ingekuwa shida.
Exactly.
Okay, my final word is that for employees, remember, as I've stated, burden is on you to prove in court that your rights have been infringed. So ensure that the way Wakila said, have evidence, always have evidence. We have had a situation where someone walks into your office, they were being paid in cash, they have no contract, the NSSF was not being paid. So you, even as a lawyer, you can't take up that case. Really you have nothing. Yeah. So your rights are infringed, right? But you don't have the evidence. So what I normally tell employees, prepare for the worst, but no one wants to be fired. But just expect the best, but prepare for the worst. So always ensure that even if you're some things you can't control, even if you're being paid in cash, find a way of even doing a communication. Even write to your employer that I've received my salary. Make sure you just put in some evidence so that in case of anything.
There's a digital footprint of the evidence.
Yes, the evidence. And communication, if it's oral, make sure after, just make a written, maybe an email or a WhatsApp saying, following a conversation on this and this, make sure there's just evidence to show. Basically, expect the best but prepare for the worst. Just imagine if tomorrow I walk to the office and I'm fired, do I have any recourse if it's unfair? And then for disciplinary hearing, when you're going, I normally see most people, they get a lawyer when, let me call it when it's too late. So I normally say the moment you see things are going left at your workplace, that's the moment to seek legal advice, so that your lawyer can guide you even in getting the evidence. So that's the best advice I can give to people. Always just be prepared in case of anything. These laws have been set to protect you. And there's a limitation, let me give that, because there are some people who, of course, losing a job is something, not everyone takes it the same way. Yeah. So some people will come back after 3 years. Right. Under Section 90 of the Employment Act, you have a minimum of 3 years after your termination to seek legal cause. Okay. So that is, and I would like to wish a happy Labor Day to my family, my dad and my mom, and my family and my brothers and sisters. All right. Yes.
Asanteni sana Ruth Tunu as well as Silas Akiro for the wise words you've given us, as well as happy Labor Day to you and yours. Truly, right. The live pictures you're looking at right now are Kenyans flocking into Uhuru Gardens, each of them, some of them carrying their umbrellas, really just showcasing how the weather is at that moment. Earlier on, we were talking to Paul Kirib as well as Arno Dida, telling us the number of people who have flocked in was quite low at that moment, but then we'll be getting more from them just to see how it is so far. We do expect a Secretary General of the Central Organization of Trade Unions, that is Kotu, Francis Atwoli, to be there, and they had invited the chief guest, President William Ruto, will be to be gracing this particular 59th celebrations of Labor Day. So we'll definitely be telling you and just showcasing you the live pictures of what will be said. Do expect members of the executive, cabinet secretaries will be giving you the live pictures as and when they do arrive on that particular bit. That we do put a pause on the whole tips on matters, the rights and what you need to know, the whole legal microscope of that. Over to you, Fred, as you continue dissecting the state of trade unions.
Thank you, Stanley. And yes, we continue beaming for you those live pictures from Uhuru Gardens, the venue of the 59th Labor Day celebrations, and we'll be heading there shortly. I'm still in studio with Nyakundi Muriasi, who's the CEO, Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers, and Peterson Washira is still joining us via video link. He's the national chairperson, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. Let's start with you, Peterson, and I'm taking you back to the press statement that we were discussing. We talked about the issue of change of employment terms. The fourth item is on emasculation of trade unions, and I'm seeking clarity on exactly what issue you have with this. What exactly are you saying, and who is seeking to emasculate trade unions?
Sorry, thank you. We are seeing it as a scheme, and this scheme, I think, started from the previous regime, and we are seeing it being amplified within this regime. Number one, as we said, even by the push we are seeing from the parliament to try and mutilate the labor laws and to also try and interfere with the unions, we see it as an executive scheme. And the reason as to why we are calling it emasculation of the unions is because this is something that, number one, has not come from any Kenyan, has not come from any worker, has not come from any union. So we are really wondering what is the motivation behind that now, when we were expecting Parliament to be coming out to strengthen the unions and to basically hold our hands and assist us in fighting for the rights, they didn't seem to have initiative in that. But when it comes to checking on the powers, the term limits, and whatever else, then we are seeing them coming with an initiative, and then there must be a motivation. And we think the motivation is from the executive, because they want probably the turnover of the leaders to be so fast that those who are coming in will not have learnt enough, will not have gained enough network and understood the playing field, so that they don't become strong enough to face them. That is one. The second one, we are seeing desperate measures to ensure that workers do not get into the union. And an example that I can give here is Kirinyaga County government. The clinic officers and the health workers who have been employed there, and especially after the county government of Kirinyaga dismissed all the health workers, they were being told that you must first declare that you are not going to join a trade union before you can be given an appointment letter. And that is something that the workers themselves have been able to inform us. And you can see the other thing is that, like that dismissal itself by the Kirinyaga government, it is meant to discourage workers from joining the unions, because the court never told the Kirinyaga County government to sack workers. In fact, when we appealed to the Public Service Commission, there is an existing directive of Public Service Commission directing Kirinyaga County Public Service Board to reinstate all the dismissed health workers because their dismissal was not within the law. But you can see the county and the governor, especially because she has pronounced herself that they are not going to come back when she is still there. It is meant to show workers that unions are danger zones, are risks that they should not engage into. And so it's a way of discouraging workers from joining the unions. And the other thing is the SRC that was brought in by the government, the one that now we are calling the union of the government, because they want to determine your pay. And you know, this is actually against the law, that they want to give an advisory that then is said to be binding, meaning they actually do not advise. They set the salaries for the civil servants, but you are not allowed as a trade union, as a representative of the workers, or as workers, you are not allowed to engage with them. So you sit in a corner with your employer, you agree, like the example of clinic officers, we have already agreed with the ministry to enhance our risk allowance from 3,000 to 15,000. The ministry has accepted. The treasury has the money. But then when you go to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, it comes out to say, no, we cannot do this because 1, 2, 3. And they are not on the negotiating table. And so what they are trying to do is to show that the unions do not have the power to negotiate and determine the salaries for the people that they represent.
Okay.
And if you look at those 3 issues, that is a long scheme that is going to progressively and gradually weaken the unions as we go forward.
Okay, Bwana Wachira.
That is why now we are coming together as unions to fight against this.
But Bwana Wachira, and I think I'll allow Bwana Muriasi to come in on this, there's also the issue of union dues. And the government, in this you say the government has been threatening union leaders and threatening to withdraw union dues. Bwana Muriasi, is this a fact, and what exactly does that mean?
Fred, I think, as I said earlier, the government is trying to run away from solving a problem. The current stalemate is about the healthcare workers' strike on some grievances that have not been addressed, and the Kenyans are suffering. Now, I saw the CS on TV saying that from today, actually quoted the date that they are not going to remit union dues. Already it has happened in some places, like in Tharaka-Nithi County, for example. The county government took us to court, and you are given time to go and sign a return to work formula. And the baseline standards of any return to work formula is that there must be no victimization, because you are going to the table to discuss and have all the issues solved amicably. So I think the government trying to employ those tactics is trying to run away from the fact that we are on strike, and it's like denying us the resources. We could not be able to sort our issues. We are waiting to see whether the threat that the CS gave is going to work out. But what I can say is that all these issues about remittances, for example, we are talking about KMBDU as a recognition agreement. And one of the items in the recognition agreement is that the employer shall be deducting and remitting the union dues that is very well captured in the legal gazette notice. So contemplating not to remit or to deduct already is a breach of the recognition agreement that has been signed between the employer and the unions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bwana Peterson Wachira, as you make your final comment, talk about that withdrawal of union dues and how that would affect the performance of unions going forward, as you make your final comment.
Yeah, thank you. Withdrawal of union dues then is a financial emasculation of the union. And you know, from the social dialogue, there is that general agreement that once an employee, actually, it's the employee who has the power. Once as an employee, I've informed my employer that I want to be deducted and that money remitted, then the CS Labor issues an order to the employer which is recognized under the Labor Relations Act, which is similar. That order is similar to a court order for the employer to actually deduct me and remit to my union in line with the labor rights. So that is against the law. It is a deliberate measure and a desperate measure to try and twist us. And it happens during each and every strike. And I believe our courts are actually going to reverse that. But as I conclude, my closing remarks would be that I want to talk to the workers of this country. And I want to tell them that many people sacrificed. Many people have gone to jail. Many people have been beaten up. Many people have paid the ultimate price to fight and ensure that the labor rights are enshrined in our constitution. The labor rights are enshrined in the International Labour Organization conventions. And we cannot be the generation that drops the ball. We are seeing a threat from the executive, from the government, and we must rise, we must sacrifice, we must ensure that the labor rights that we continue to enjoy will also be enjoyed by the next generation of workers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bwana Peterson Wachira. Bwana Muriasi, anything to add as your final comment?
What I can tell the Kenyan workers, especially my members, that is the laboratory officers who are working in Kenya, is that we have a lot to do. The government has neglected the plight of the Kenyan worker. The government is only interested when it wants to get something out of your pocket, not adding anything valuable to your pocket. We've seen the force the government used to get the housing levy and all the other taxations that have come to pass. And we're telling them today, the government is the one that is on strike, actually. Because if we are on day 29 of the strike, and the government has not called us on the table, we saw the CS in Parliament lying to the public that she has written to us to give some documents to her. She even quoted that it's only clinical officers who are talking about the risk allowance. And in our strike notice, item number 7 was about the risk allowance that was actually withdrawn from our pay slips. So it shows how the government is really, there is a lot of negligence. It's either the CS whom the strike notice was addressed to has not had adequate time to go through the strike notice.
Okay.
Because Kenyans are dying. The laboratories offer very crucial emergency services. Today, if you go to facilities which have been closed, if you have a patient who has an emergency and needs some blood transfusion, the same could not be offered. Just because the government has refused to call us on the table to sign a recognition agreement that does not need any coin.
Okay.
Does not need any budget. I have heard the CS and the government talk about 6 billion that will be used to implement the CBA for the doctors. But with us, our issue here does not need any budget.
Money
so
is not the issue.
We have not talked about money, because even the risk allowance you're talking about is something that has been withdrawn for the payslip. Okay. As much as we are agitating for risk allowance that is worthy our risk, enhanced risk allowance, but for now we are demanding that give us what was in our payslip. Okay. Because if a mortician, a health records officer is getting a risk allowance, what about a laboratory personnel who in every patient encounters the risk? So today, my submission is that the country has really neglected us, and we'll soldier on. Okay. As unions, we are not going to surrender. Our work is to fight for the welfare of these healthcare workers, and we are not going to stop anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bwana Nyakundi Muriasi, CEO, Kenya National Union of Medical Laboratory Officers. I'd also want to thank Peterson Wachira, National Chairperson, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, as well as Dr. Dennis Miskela, Deputy Secretary General, KMPDU. Our panelists this morning, as we discussed the state of trade unions. This, as we continue with our special coverage of the Labor Day celebrations, the main event happening at the Uhuru Gardens. And yes, you can see some live pictures from Uhuru Gardens right now. And of course, we'll be bringing you more details from that end as dignitaries and workers celebrate the 59th edition of Labor Day. Thank you so much to all our panelists and for your time at TV47. Asante sana. The event today, of course, comes amidst a lot of discussions around the national wage bill, the public sector wage bill, and the bloated public sector workforce as well. So much has been said, and so much will continue to be said about this same event. We wait to see if at all there will be discussions around the minimum wage, which is always a normal and a common discussion, especially during Labor Day discussions. Whether or not the president will be present for that remains to be seen as well.
As well as the other Labor Day celebrations at International Convention Center, KICC, the second one. So wait to see how that will be happening.
All right.
Yes.
So much coming your way. Do stand by and keep watching TV47. I think from my end and Stanley, we need to go and celebrate Workers' Day.
You know, Fred, tumezoea on Friday having a lady here.
Oh, yes.
Alafu tunajua it's a weekend has come. So finally
Polish Kiswahili.
Kwa kweli.
Sasa leo ikiwa siku ya wafanyakazi hapa nchini na kwingineko. Anajiunga nasi sasa ni Ruga Eval ambaye atatuelekeza kwa mambo zaidi kulingana na mambo ya wafanyakazi hii leo. Picha za moja kwa moja kutoka Uhuru Gardens ambapo ni uga ambao nashuhudia sherehe za hivi leo.
Kwa sasa baadhi ya wageni walikuwa wamewasili. Kiswahili changu pia.
Kiswahili kimeishia hapo. Unasherehekea nini siku hii ya wafanyakazi Ruga?
Jamani, hata mjanisalimu, hamjambo.
Makosa ni
sisi tulikuja hapa mapema. Salamu tulimalizia mwendo wa saa 12 asubuhi.
Lakini makosa ni yetu. Habari yako Ruga Ivan?
Salama kabisa. Ingawa ni asubuhi ambayo iko na kijibaridi kabisa. Hata nashangaa Wakenya wamejaa kwenye bustani ya Uhuru kusherehekea ama kuadhimisha siku hii ya wafanyakazi. Ni siku ya kufana kweli, matarajio yamo.
Okay. Sawa sawa, kijibaridi amesema. Tuende kwa bustani sasa.
Tuende kwenye bustani ya Uhuru.
On behalf of sisi tuseme kwaheri.
Yes. And we leave it now to Ruga Ivan and the rest of the team to bring you the events as they happen for the rest of the day.
I'm usually Stanley Nyeringita.
My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Have a lovely morning.
And happy Labor Day to you and yours. Over to Ruga. Tell us what is up next.
Naam, sasa tutavuka moja kwa moja hadi kwenye bustani ya Uhuru. Mwanzo niseme shukrani, umefanya kazi safi sana. Sasa na asanteni sana kwa pia kwa